Chapter 4385. Human Experimentation? Lin Yi's eyes lit up. Of course, the people on Sky Class Island didn't understand this term, but everyone in the common world knew about it. The Fire Wolf gang that Jiangwen was in specialized in this. Since the appearance of the common world's department stores, Lin Yi already felt that this central chamber of commerce was inextricably linked to the common world. He didn't expect it to be so. Now there was a human experimentation. More and more evidence showed that this central chamber of commerce was most likely developed from the common world. However, back then, the common world's top forces gathered together, and with so many people, they barely managed to activate the teleportation circle and send them to Sky Class Island. Just what kind of power was behind this central chamber of commerce? Not only did they successfully extend their tentacles to the Heavenly Stage Islands, but they also easily swept through the 5 Heavenly Stage Islands. It could be said that they were coming aggressively, showing an unstoppable state of madness. The key was that there were even profound ascending stage masters in charge, and it seemed that there were more than 1 or 2 of them. Even Lin Yi didn't dare to think too deeply about this power. It was too shocking. Yes, human experimentation. Anyway, after those people were taken out, none of them came back. I don't know if they died or something, but I don't think it's anything good. Plus, with my nascent soul mid-stage strength, no one here is stronger than me. So, every time they ask for someone, I'll let someone else take the blame. I won't go. Sun Hengbiao said proudly. Although he didn't have good eyesight, he was a pirate leader in the magic cold sea. He wasn't an idiot. Even if he didn't understand human experimentation, he could roughly tell if it was good or bad. Predicting good or bad luck sounded mysterious, but many masters who reached a certain level actually had this ability. It was just that the accuracy was different. Let others go. You call the shots in this dungeon. Those guards outside, those profound ascending stage masters listen to you? Lin Yi sneered. In front of a profound ascending stage master, you're nothing. Hearing that, the others sneered and mocked him. Sun Hengbiao's face instantly turned red. He was used to being arrogant, trying to flatter himself for no reason. Even though he had suffered a lot because of it, he couldn't change his character. With Sun Hengbiao's nascent soul mid-stage strength, he could act arrogantly in front of these people. But to the profound ascending stage masters outside, they were ants that could be easily crushed with 1 foot. They were ants that could be easily crushed to death with 1 foot. If they really wanted to take people out for human experiments, would they even discuss it with Sun Hengbiao? If Sun Hengbiao really had such a big face, why would he be locked up in this dungeon? Bullshit. That. Sun Hengbiao glared at everyone, but he didn't dare show his temper in front of Lin Yi. He scratched his head awkwardly and said, They didn't want to talk to me at first, but after a while, I realized that they weren't interested in nascent soul masters. He took the others away one by one, but he didn't care about me at all. Look, there's another nascent soul cultivator over there. It's been a long time, and he hasn't been taken away. Following Sun Hengbiao's finger, in the corner of the dungeon, Lin Yi saw an ordinary-looking man in a green robe. He was meditating where he was. Yes, that's right. The man in green saw Lin Yi's gaze, and nodded quickly. That was because he was quite strong. Sun Hengbiao never provoked him, so he naturally wouldn't provoke Sun Hengbiao. But this new fiend could beat Sun Hengbiao into such a miserable state. It was obvious that he was not to be trifled with. Facing Lin Yi's question, of course, he didn't dare to neglect it. Oh, that's strange. Lin Yi couldn't help but frown. He had heard a little about human experimentation. It was actually like doing a scientific experiment. No matter what the purpose was, in order to find the most effective method, a large number of human samples would be taken. And the human samples had to be involved at all levels. It didn't make sense that nascent soul stage masters were excluded, unless the Central Chamber of Commerce's human experimentation research didn't include nascent soul stage masters, but specifically targeted golden core stage masters. Hearing Sun Hengbiao's words, everyone else in the dungeon started to panic. Apart from the green-clothed man in the nascent soul realm, they were all experts in the gold core realm. Didn't that mean that they would be dragged out to do some human experiments one day? Everyone knew that it was definitely not something good. Otherwise, the the Central Chamber of Commerce wouldn't have captured them and locked them up here. Maybe after the human experimentation, they wouldn't even have a whole corpse left. Everyone here was like pigs waiting to be slaughtered. I've been here for a long time, and I've never caused trouble for them. I've even made the people in the dungeon obedient, so they turn a blind eye to me. Sun Hengbiao said a little proudly. Now that he was trapped in the dungeon and couldn't see the light of day, it naturally couldn't compare to the scenery outside. But to be able to find a sense of superiority from these people was also a rare psychological comfort. Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't find the word strange. In order to manage a prison full of practitioners, they needed a prison tyrant to help them suppress the prisoners, other than strict monitoring. An existence like Sun Hengbiao wasn't a bad thing for the guards outside. In fact, they were more than happy to see it happen. So the other Golden Core stage masters have all been taken away? Lin Yi asked thoughtfully. Yes. Anyway, those who came earlier than me have all been taken away. Those who came later than me have also been taken away. Sun Hengbiao nodded. His gaze swept across the other people in the dungeon, and he threatened them maliciously. These people, it's only a matter of time. Hee hee. Everyone couldn't help but shrink their necks in fear. Even Lu Bianren, who was always calm, was obviously flustered. No matter how strong a master was, he still couldn't get rid of the fear of the unknown. However, as a Golden Core stage master, Lin Yi wasn't too worried at the moment. First, he knew what human experimentation was. Second, compared to the others here, he was stronger. Naturally, he was more confident that he could deal with all kinds of threats. Apart from this, what else do you know? Lin Yi continued to ask. Sun Hengbiao was the one who had been here the longest, so he must know the most. Chapter 4386. Really? Lin Yi frowned and asked. Unspecified currency. Seeing that Lin Yi didn't seem to believe him, he quickly raised his hand and swore. It's true, I swear to the heavens, I really don't know. Although those profound ascension practitioners turned a blind eye to me, they never talked to me, and I didn't dare to ask. One wrong question might kill me. Okay, next. Lin Yi did not continue to make things difficult for Sun Hengbiao, and immediately turned to the people next to him. Why were they caught? How long were they locked up here? And asked them one by one. Although everyone was a little puzzled as to why Lin Yi did this, but with Sun Hengbiao's experience there, they would not dare to provoke such a cruel master. Moreover, it was just asking 2 questions. It was not a big deal, and they were not like Sun Hengbiao, who would rob treasures at every turn. Naturally, they were happy to cooperate. Everyone asked one by one, and everyone had different reasons. Some had a conflict with the Central Chamber of Commerce because they were buying things. Some had a drink and went to the Central Chamber of Commerce to cause trouble, and some owed the Central Chamber of Commerce spiritual jades. There were all kinds of strange reasons. No matter what they could think of, no matter what kind of messy reasons, some even made people not know whether to laugh or cry. But all of them had one thing in common, and that was that they were all related to the Central Chamber of Commerce. After asking around, it was finally Lu Bianren's turn. Lin Yi deliberately asked them one by one. In addition to wanting to understand as much as possible, he actually wanted to ask Lu Bianren the most, but he did not want to expose his identity, so he could not name him alone. So he could only use this method to deceive people. The two faced each other at close range. Lu Bianren felt that Lin Yi looked familiar, as if he had seen him before. Of course, he had never seen this rough and boorish face before. But Lin Yi's temperament was really familiar, and a little strange. The strange thing was, Lin Yi's temperament really did not match his rough and boorish appearance. Most people would not feel it if they did not look carefully, but now that they felt it at such a close distance, they would feel out of place. In the past, when Lu Bianren was in the welcoming pavilion, because his authority was taken away, he had nothing to do. Therefore, he had been studying all kinds of ancient books, especially the theory of face-to-face physiognomy. As the saying goes, one's appearance is born from one's heart. Lin Yi's current rough and boorish appearance was completely incompatible with his temperament. For Lu Bianren, who was proficient in physiognomy, this was simply subverting common sense. It was not scientific at all. However, Lu Bianren did not know that this fiend was Lin Yi. He was just as respectful as everyone else, not daring to be neglectful. I originally went to the Central Chamber of Commerce to gather information, but I don't know why or how I offended them. But I was inexplicably captured. Even now, I still haven't figured out the whole story. Lu Bianren smiled bitterly. Everyone was in disbelief, regardless of the reason, whether it was a big or small matter. When they were arrested, they had at least offended the Central Chamber of Commerce. This Lu Bianren was naturally the same. How could he be arrested just for gathering information? These words were not entirely true. He must be hiding something. This was everyone's first reaction. However, Lu Bianren was telling the truth. This was the truth. Up until now, he was still confused and had no idea what was going on. Lenny was also a little surprised, but he did not think that Lu Bianren was lying. Because Lu Bianren had always been open and above board, and he was an upright person. He would not deliberately fabricate and deceive for this kind of thing. What information did you go to gather? Lenny continued to ask without batting an eyelid. This, can I not say? Lu Bianren was a little embarrassed. Everyone was suddenly in an uproar, and Sun Hongbiao looked like he was looking at a dead man. This fiend in front of him could even beat a ruthless person like him half to death. You are just a golden core expert, and you dare to put on airs in front of him? It's just a question that doesn't matter. It's not like he will cut your flesh. Is it necessary to provoke such a ruthless person for such a small matter? Even if there is something unspeakable in it, can't you just make up a lie? Why be so direct? Isn't this courting death? However, this was Lu Bianren's style of doing things. If he could say it, he would say it. If he didn't want to say it, he would be straightforward. It was indeed easy to make up a lie. But if he would do that, then he would not be Lu Bianren. Lu Bianren did not have any friendship with these people in the dungeon. Everyone was gloating, waiting for the fiend Lin Yi to flip out and watch the show. However, Lin Yi's reaction was far beyond their expectations. Alright then, forget it. Lin Yi nodded calmly, and then moved on to the next person. Such a calm reaction made everyone wonder if they were blind, especially Sun Hongbiao, who almost cursed it out loud on the spot. When he was dealing with him just now, this demon god was ruthless. There was no way he was going to be so easy to negotiate. Even Lu Bianren himself felt a little surprised. He was prepared to receive the other party's anger. But who would have thought that it would really be so easy? With just a few words, it was over. If it were anyone else, this person in front of him would probably have given them a kick. Lu Bianren could not help but wonder if this strange sense of familiarity was really not an illusion. Had he really dealt with this person before? Everyone looked at each other, but did not dare to make a sound. They could only watch as Lin Yi continued to ask questions with a belly full of questions. Finally, after asking everyone in the dungeon, Lin Yi calmly found a place to sit cross-legged. Coincidentally, it was right next to Lu Bianren. This time, even if everyone did not know what was going on, they began to understand. This fiend, who was even more ruthless than Sun Hongbiao, was obviously treating Lu Bianren differently. In this dungeon, Lu Bianren had always been quiet, and had never done anything out of line. In everyone's eyes, he had always been the kind of person who was easy to bully. But now they had to think about it a little more in the future. Lu Bianren was indeed easy to bully, but if he made the fiend next to him unhappy, then he would not be able to find his grave even if he cried. In this way, not only was everyone surprised and suspicious, even Lu Bianren himself was wondering if he had dealt with this person before. He did not look familiar, but his temperament was indeed very familiar. Chapter 4387. Although this dungeon did not give people the feeling that the guards were not so strict, and there was no torture, at first glance, it still felt quite peaceful, and there was no sense of tension, but people with discerning eyes could see that this was definitely a place of trouble, and they could not stay for long. There were many masters in the Central Chamber of Commerce. If they were really selected to do human experiments, then it would be too late. At that time, there must be a profound ascending stage master. Even with Lin Yi's trump card, it would be difficult for him to do anything in front of a ridiculously strong profound ascending stage master. The success rate of taking the opportunity to escape may be less than 10%. Therefore, if he wanted to save his life, The only way was to escape from this dark dungeon before he was selected to do human experiments. Although the dungeon was blessed by a protective formation, and the walls were extremely hard, even with the destructive power of a large number of nascent soul stage masters, it would be difficult to break it. But in Lin Yi's view, as long as his Dan-fired true chi bomb was condensed long enough, he still had a great chance of blowing it up. However, it was not difficult to blow up the dungeon, but it could not guarantee that the people inside would not be injured. He could not care less about other people's lives, but it was not easy to find Lu Bianren, and Lin Yi could not ignore his life. And if he wanted to successfully escape from the prison, the most difficult point was not to destroy the dungeon, but the guards outside. When Lin Yi was caught by Ma Tianling before, he saw 2 guards outside, and both of them were extraordinary masters. Lin Yi felt that they were at least at the peak of the late stage of nascent soul stage, and there might even be a profound ascending stage master among them. If it was before, letting a profound ascending stage master be a guard, this kind of thing was simply a fantasy, and Lin Yi would never believe it. But after experiencing today's events, even if he did not believe it, he had to believe it. Since a profound ascending stage master could be a follower of others, then it did not seem too strange to be a guard, right? Prepare for the best. Since he had decided to break out of the prison, he had to consider the worst-case scenario. Otherwise, if he acted rashly, not only would he not be able to escape, but he would also be captured and put under strict surveillance. He might even be sent to be used as a human experiment. That would truly be crying without tears. Therefore, before completely probing out the situation outside, Lin Yi would not act rashly. Right now the only choice was, he would act according to the circumstances. However, while Lin Yi was silently calculating, he also began to slowly compress and condense the super alchemic fire true chi bomb. Even if he decided to act according to the circumstances, he had to first prepare this super killer weapon in advance. Otherwise, if the opportunity really came, it would be fleeting, and it would be too late to compress it at the last minute. Lin Yi didn't say anything. Everyone else in the dungeon, everyone, including Lu Bianren and Sun Hengbiao, held their breaths and dared not speak, fearing that they might attract Lin Yi's attention and disgust. It was not worth it to be beaten half to death by this demon for no reason. In such a dark silence, after who knows how long, the dungeon door suddenly opened, and 2 people walked in one after another. Lin Yi carefully looked at the 2 without a trace, and he could be sure that these 2 were the guards he saw before. Perhaps it was to deter the people in the dungeon, to avoid some unnecessary trouble. The momentum of these 2 people was not restrained at all. The surging and powerful aura was above everyone's head, making everyone tremble in fear, not daring to have the slightest disloyalty. For the first time, Lin Yi clearly felt the strength of these 2 people. He couldn't help but be shocked, and at the same time secretly felt a little scared. Of these 2 people, one was a peak Yuanying late-stage master, which was not too much to worry about, but the other was a real profound ascending stage master. Fortunately, he had prepared for the worst before. Otherwise, if he really broke out of the dungeon, Lin Yi estimated that he would be a corpse now. Whose turn is it this time? The peak Yuanying late-stage master pouted and looked at Sun Hengbiao, while the profound ascending stage master stood on the sideboard. For a super existence of his level, it was already a waste of talent to guard such a small dungeon. If it wasn't for the fact that human experimentation was the most important thing in the entire organization, he would not be willing to stay in this place at all. Of course, he didn't need to worry about trivial things like sample extraction. Not only him, but even the peak Yuanying late-stage master was too lazy to pay attention to these people in the dungeon. Basically, according to the order of first come, first served, and let the prison tyrant Sun Hengbiao help decide. Anyway, as long as the samples were provided on time, nothing else mattered. This one. Sun Hengbiao quickly pointed at someone. Ha! Lin Yi suddenly frowned. The person Sun Hengbiao pointed at was actually Lu Bianren, who was sitting next to him. It wasn't easy to find Lu Bianren, but in the end, Lu Bianren was taken away for human experimentation before he could even recognize him. From then on, his life and death were unknown. Was there anything more fucked up than this in the world? Lin Yi's mind turned quickly, and he immediately made up his mind. If it really didn't work, then he could only release the ultimate weapon now. With the huge destructive power of the Super Dan-fired True Chi Bomb, even if the opponent was a profound ascending stage master, it should be difficult for them to react quickly if they were caught off guard. Taking advantage of the chaos, he would quickly escape with Lu Bianren. However, the success rate of doing so was not high. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Lin Yi didn't want to take such a risky move. He immediately stared at Sun Hengbiao fiercely. Although Sun Hengbiao was a blind idiot, he had suffered so much at the hands of Lin Yi, and it had already left a shadow in his heart. As soon as he saw Lin Yi's unfriendly gaze, his heart suddenly skipped a beat, and his back suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. According to the order of first come, first served, it was indeed Lu Bianren's turn this time. But looking at the meaning of this demon, it was obvious that he didn't want Lu Bianren to be taken away. If he disobeyed him, he was afraid that even the half of his life that he had painstakingly picked up would be buried together with Lu Bianren. Oh no, I remembered wrong. It's this one. Sun Hengbiao quickly changed his words and pointed at a person at the door. He wanted to point at Lin Yi, but unfortunately, Lin Yi had just been caught today, and the guards must still have an impression of him. Moreover, this was a nascent soul stage master who was stronger than him. They didn't want him at all. Even if he pointed at him, it would be useless. Later, when the guards left, Lin Yi would definitely kill him first. If he knew that Lin Yi was actually just a middle-stage gold core stage master, Sun Hengbiao would probably cry and faint in the toilet. Chapter 4388. Ah! The unlucky guy who was pointed at by Sun Hengbiao suddenly shouted, "It's a mistake. Not me. Not me. Cut the crap. Leave by yourself, or I'll pinch you to death." The guards impatiently stretched out their palms, and the man didn't dare to make another sound. He could only obediently follow the two guards and leave. Watching the dungeon door slowly close, everyone finally let out a sigh of relief, especially Lu Bianren, whose life was hanging by a thread just now. He let out a long breath. If he was taken away by the guards for some kind of human experiment, he might have a slim chance of survival, or he might not even have a slim chance of survival. He would definitely die. While everyone was calming down, Lin Yi was overjoyed. The moment he opened the door, he clearly sensed that there were no other guards other than the two masters guarding the door. Thinking about it, it made sense. A supermaster at the profound ascension stage, and a master at the peak of the late nascent soul stage, were more than enough to guard this small dungeon. Any more manpower would be a waste. There was no need. And what made Lin Yi even more overjoyed was that the two guards actually escorted the guy out together. Although he didn't know the destination, as long as the two left the dungeon, even if it was just for a short while, it would be a godsend opportunity for Lin Yi. He secretly estimated the time. When the two guards left, there should be no one outside. This was a golden opportunity. If he missed this opportunity, when Sun Hengbiao found out that he was a master at the gold core stage, he might not have such an opportunity again. "If you don't want to die, stand behind me," Lin Yi yelled without warning as he stood up abruptly, giving the people in the dungeon a big fright. They looked at each other, speechless. The guards had just left. What was this demon god doing? What was he doing? What the hell was he doing now? No, big brother. I really didn't mean to target Lu Bianren. It was his turn this time, and I changed my words at the last minute. Please spare my life, spare my life. Sun Hengbiao was so scared that he peed his pants. He thought that Lin Yi was going to make him pay for what he did. Lin Yi glanced at this guy, and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said with a cold face, "Cut the crap. If you don't want to die, stand behind me. Don't you understand me? Then don't blame me if you lose your life." "Ah, you're not going to kill me?" Sun Hengbiao breathed a sigh of relief and rolled up, scrambling to stand behind Lin Yi. The others didn't know what was going on, but they didn't dare disobey this demon. Even someone as strong as Sun Hengbiao was beaten into submission, let alone people like them who were far weaker than Sun Hengbiao. After looking at each other, they all walked behind Lin Yi. Lu Bianren stood next to Lin Yi, and was also very surprised. He didn't know what this demon had to do with him, and he didn't know what this demon was planning. But he didn't dare to ask, and could only do the same as Sun Hongdiao and the others. He looked on anxiously from the side. Use your true qi to protect your body, or I won't care if you die. Lin Yi shouted again, and the super alchemy fire true qi bomb, which he had been condensing and compressing, slowly appeared on his palms. Although it hadn't exploded yet, but the horrifying aura that leaked out from it, even if it was just a little bit, was enough to make everyone's heart jump. They looked at Lin Yi as if they were looking at a monster, trembling with fear and terror. They didn't know what kind of move it was, and they didn't know how it was condensed, but that didn't hinder their perception of danger. Such a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth, it was definitely not a joke. Even if they were all experts above the golden core stage, once they were affected by it, they would die without a doubt. This demon was indeed a demon that no one could afford to offend. At this point, everyone had more or less guessed Lin Yi's intention. They were all anxious and shocked, but they also couldn't help but look hopeful. No matter who it was, being locked up in this sunless dungeon and living in fear every day, wondering if they would be the next subject of the human experiment, after a long time, they would be scared to the point of mental illness. If there was a chance to escape from the dungeon, even if there was only a slim chance of survival, no one would let it go easily. Even Sun Hongdiao was the same. The human experiment didn't need nascent soul experts now. But who knew what would happen in the future? In such a troublesome place, of course they had to escape as soon as possible, or they wouldn't even know when they would die. Everyone hurriedly activated their true qi to protect themselves, and raised their heads, waiting for Lin Yi's next move. But hope was hope. Many of them had been locked up for a long time, and to a greater extent, they were just there to watch the show. They didn't believe that Lin Yi could succeed. After all, Lin Yi was definitely not the first to have the idea of breaking out of the prison. Many people, including Sun Hongdiao, had the same idea, and some had even put it into practice. But the result was obvious: they had all failed. The dungeon was reinforced by a special protective formation, so it was extremely sturdy. Normal nascent soul experts couldn't break it at all, unless they were profound ascension experts. But this demon, although brutal, could beat up Sun Hongdiao, a middle nascent soul expert. He was indeed very strong. But to say that he was a profound ascension giant, that was too much. They were hopeful, but they didn't think much of it. This was the mentality of the people in the dungeon. But when Lin Yi suddenly made his move, their eyes instantly changed. Boom, boom, boom. The ground shook, and everyone couldn't even count how many times there were. Maybe it was the shocking effect of the super bomb, or maybe it was the chain reaction, but everyone just felt like the sky was falling and the earth was cracking, as if it was the end of the world, and they were panic-stricken. Even though many people had protected themselves with true qi, they were still hurt by the aftershocks. Some were even seriously injured and almost died on the spot. It's open. It's really open. Sun Hongdiao suddenly pointed forward and shouted in ecstasy. In the chaos, although everyone couldn't hear what he was shouting, they looked in the direction of his finger, and their expressions immediately froze. The dungeon had not been completely destroyed, but there was no doubt that the protective array on the walls had been destroyed, because not far in front of them, in a place where the sun could not be seen, a ray of sunlight that had not shone for a long time suddenly shone through. Some were in disbelief, some were shocked, some were overjoyed, and some were even sobbing. At this moment, everyone's expressions in the dungeon were all very colorful. Chapter 4389. The little bit of luck and hope in these people's hearts had long been eroded and buried by the boundless darkness. They thought that this might be the end of their lives, but they never dreamed that there would be a day where they could see the light of day again. Let's go! Lin Yi suddenly pulled Lu Bianren and rushed forward with his head down. Everything was within his expectations. The Super Dan Fire Jinqi bomb had been brewing for so long. If it still couldn't blow up the dungeon, then it would be really strange. Lu Bianren was originally shocked like the others, but when he was suddenly pulled by Lin Yi, he sprained his ankle and fell to the ground. He even ate a mouthful of dust. But Lin Yi didn't care about that. He just dragged him and rushed out. The opportunity was fleeting. although the dungeon had been successfully blown up, as Lenny had calculated before. This was only the most basic and simple first step. Whether they could successfully escape or not, the next step was the key. The explosion was earth-shattering. Even an ordinary person, even if they were 100 miles away, would be able to detect it, not to mention that the other party was at the profound ascension stage. Once they noticed it, they would definitely rush over here. If they couldn't escape before they arrived, then all their previous efforts would be in vain. Watching Lenny run away with Lu Bianren, Sun Hongbiao and the others finally reacted. After looking at each other, they hurriedly rushed forward with all their strength. Even though their Zhenqi protection was not strong enough, they were still screaming and limping as they ran. Being locked in the dungeon meant that they could only sit and wait to be taken away for human experiments. If they didn't run now, when would they? After blowing up the broken dungeon door, Lenny dragged Lu Bianren with one hand, and was the first to rush out of the dungeon and see the light of day again. There was a tunnel between the dungeon and the Demon Lung City, but at this time, they were running for their lives. Whoever rushed into the tunnel would be an idiot. The other party could just block them from the front and back, and they would be able to catch a turtle in a jar. Therefore, his only choice was to escape to the open space outside. Looking around, all he could see were towering mountains and lofty ridges. The mountain ranges were continuous, rising and falling. It was actually a huge mountain range. This was beyond Lin Yi's expectation. He had thought that the Devil Lung Sea region was only the size of a palm, and that he would be able to see the sea at a glance once he left the Devil Lung City. He had never thought that there would be such a majestic mountain range in front of him. Then Sun Hongbiao and the others rushed out from behind. All of them looked at the scene around them, unable to conceal the ecstasy on their faces. They thought that they had escaped just like that, and they could finally relax. However, Lenny did not dare to hesitate. His divine sense was extremely powerful and sensitive, enough to surpass many original infant stage cultivators. Lenny could clearly feel that he was within a radius of less than 5 miles. There were at least 4 or 5 powerful auras approaching from all directions. Among them, there was the terrifying aura of a mysterious ascending stage giant. Even if it was Lenny, otherwise, he would have already escaped when he was in the Central Chamber of Commerce. Why wait until now? The only chance was when the mysterious ascending stage giant rushed back. A mere 5 miles distance. For a mysterious ascending stage giant, it was just a matter of a thought. At most, it would only take 3 breaths for them to appear above their heads. It was a race against time. Lenny did not even dare to breathe. He dragged Lu Bianren, who was still in a daze, and chose a direction where there were no experts around, and immediately ran with all his might. Sun Hongbiao and the others immediately reacted, and without saying a word, they followed Lin Yi and ran. When faced with the threat of death, people's potential was absolutely beyond imagination. Although most of the people here were only golden core stage cultivators, when they began to run with all their might, their speed was not to be underestimated. Perhaps even some original infant stage cultivators could not compare to them. Split up or we will all die. Lenny yelled when he saw these people following him like they were grasping at straws, trying to save their lives. With so many people running together, the target was too big. Any mysterious ascending stage cultivator could easily catch up with them. And even Lenny himself would not be able to escape. Only by splitting up and running would they have a chance. After all, these people in the Central Chamber of Commerce were powerful, but they seemed to be walking the elite route. Lenny had not seen many small fries so far, and there were 40 to 50 people here. Once they split up and ran, no matter how strong the experts in the Central Chamber of Commerce were, they would not be able to split up. The most likely result was that the unlucky ones would be caught first, but the lucky ones would have a chance to escape from under their noses. Anyone could understand such a simple logic. After Lenny shouted, Sun Hongbiao and the others immediately split up. In terms of pure strength, no one here, including Lin Yi, could escape from the hands of a mysterious ascending stage cultivator. So their only choice was to bet on their luck. Seeing that everyone had scattered, Lenny was relieved, but he still did not dare to neglect. He fully used the butterfly subtle steps, coupled with the speed bonus of the gale-chasing lightning boots, and the true chi ejection technique he mastered after coming to the heavenly stage island, his speed was instantly pushed to the extreme, leaving only a series of blurred figures, flashing quickly in the dense forest. With such amazing speed, how was this running? It was simply flying. Unless it was a freak like the will of heaven, ordinary nascent soul stage masters could not catch up at all. So as long as he was not the first target of a mysterious ascending stage master, the probability of Lin Yi successfully escaping was at least more than 70%. Lin Yi dragged the confused Lu Bianren as he took the lead, and in less than 3 breaths, he heard cries of pain from behind him. He didn't even need to turn his head to look to know that someone had been caught by the masters of the Central Chamber of Commerce. As for what happened to them, whether they were dead or alive, that was something he didn't know. However, none of this had anything to do with Lin Yi. He had done all he could. Those people weren't strong enough, they weren't lucky enough to escape, so they couldn't blame anyone else. Even if they didn't run, they would still die in the dungeon. Lin Yi gave them a chance, so what could they do if they didn't take it? Without stopping, Lin Yi dragged Lu Bianren all the way. After rushing out of the vast mountains, there was a boundless sea in front of him. His luck was not bad. At least he was not targeted by a mysterious ascending stage master. As for the others, even if they noticed and wanted to catch up, in the face of Lin Yi's terrifying speed, most of them were powerless. Chapter 4390. Lin Yi was not afraid of running out of energy. As long as his body could take it, he could run until the sky turned dark. On the contrary, Lu Bianren, who had been dragged all the way, was dizzy. Although he was also a middle-stage gold core master, Lu Bianren had never experienced such a thrilling speed. Plus, he wasn't in control of his own body from start to finish. He was just being swung around by Lin Yi, and his stomach was already churning. He hadn't had a proper meal for a couple of months in the dungeon, and Lu Bianren was throwing up. Looking at Lu Bianren, who had always been calm and unshakable, with a face full of pain and vomiting, Lin Yi did not know whether to laugh or cry. However, he did not have time to stop and let Lu Bianren breathe. Even if he wanted to vomit, he had to wait until he was out of danger. Regardless of the consequences, Lin Yi ran along the coastline for a full 6 hours. Finally, he saw the city wall of Emolung City. There was no aura of a powerful master behind him. They must have given up on chasing after him. After all, Lin Yi wasn't a serious criminal to the Central Merchant Group. He'd only been caught by accident on the 3rd floor. And those people probably didn't even remember what Lin Yi looked like. Now that they were chasing after so many people, it wasn't surprising that they'd missed Lin Yi and Lu Bianren. And there was no need to get so many people involved. After entering the downtown area, Lin Yi immediately restrained his aura. He was no different from an ordinary passerby. Lu Bianren, on the other hand, had already lost his aura. Other than a slight stumble, no one would pay attention to him. After a few turns, Lin Yi brought Lu Bianren to the inn where the Equal of Heaven escort agency was staying. Without saying anything, he returned to his room. The waiter next to him did not think much. After all, there were so many people coming and going. It was impossible for them to remember the appearance of all the guests. Since they could open the door, it meant that they were serious guests. There was nothing to be suspicious about. Only then did Lin Yi let out a sigh of relief. Even if he knew that the other party was unlikely to mobilize a large force, but the pressure brought by a profound ascending stage master was really not a small matter. Even Lin Yi was not relaxed. As for Lu Bianren, although he had been dragged along by Lin Yi the whole way, and had not exerted any strength on his own, his current condition was much worse than Lin Yi's. He had already been on the verge of collapsing along the way, and now that he had relaxed, he was even more battered and exhausted. He almost fainted on the spot. Standing at the side and watching Lu Bianren's dizzy appearance, Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. Lu Bianren had always been someone who would remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. After knowing him for so long, this was the first time he had seen Lu Bianren so embarrassed. "Thank you for saving my life, great hero." After feeling dizzy for a while, Lu Bianren recovered a little and quickly cupped his hands to thank Lin Yi. Although he was puzzled, he knew that this Wu Fu who he had never met before, was trying to save him, so he did not resist at all. Otherwise, even if he wasn't a match for him, once he really struggled, even Linny would find it difficult to deal with. No need, this is what I should do. Linny smiled and waved his hand. What I should do? Lu Bianren looked at Lin Yi with a strange expression, but he didn't rashly ask for details. Instead he said, "Dare I ask, great hero, what is your intention in bringing me here? If there is nothing else, then I will take my leave first. I'll take my leave first. I'll repay you for saving my life in the future. Don't be in a hurry to leave." Lin Yi reached out to stop him. With a mischievous face he asked, "There is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Aren't you curious at all? Don't you want to ask who I am, and why I went out of my way to save you?" "This, I am indeed curious. If it is convenient, I hope you will not be stingy with your guidance." Lu Bianren's heart immediately sank. Could it be that this guy came with ill intentions? He had just escaped from the wolf's den and entered the tiger's cave? Lin Yi smiled mysteriously and didn't answer. He reached out and slowly took off the thousand silk mask. Seeing Lin Yi's original appearance, Lu Bianren, who was originally a little nervous, was immediately stunned and couldn't speak for a long time. You are Lin Yi." Lu Bianren couldn't help but widen his eyes in surprise and joy. Never in his dreams would he have thought that this powerful and vicious demon was actually Lin Yi. "Haha, senior brother Lu. I trust you have been well since we last met." Lin Yi smiled and cupped his fists. "So it really is you. Aya, you gave me such a fright." Lu Bianren's heart finally fell to the ground. His whole person seemed to deflate, and he slumped on the stool without a care for his image. He had been on tenterhooks, but since the other party was Lin Yi, he naturally had nothing to worry about. Forgive me. The Jianghu is dangerous. I wore a mask to change my appearance just in case." Lin Yi smiled and sat down with him. He poured a cup of tea for Lu Bianren and himself. "Yes, this should be done. If I had been as careful as you, perhaps I wouldn't have ended up in this situation today." Lu Bianren sighed and drank the tea in one gulp. Then he looked up and down at Lin Yi again. He clicked his tongue in wonder and asked doubtfully, "Junior brother Lin Yi, why are you here?" Lu Bianren really had a stomach full of questions now. Just a year ago, Lin Yi was still a newcomer, who had just been teleported here from the mortal world. Now in just a short year, he had actually grown into a ruthless person, who could even beat Sun Hongbiao, a mid-stage nascent soul expert. Wasn't this growth too fast? Especially the move that collapsed the dungeon just now. Its power was strong enough to destroy heaven and earth. Lu Bianren even suspected that it had exceeded the level of a nascent soul expert. With such a terrifying and heaven-defying growth speed, his junior brother's aptitude was not just 1 in 10,000. Even saying that it was 1 in 100 million was definitely underestimating him. I became an inner disciple 2 months ago, and accepted a trial mission, which was to capture the evil cultivator Wu Baoliang. His most recent appearance was in the Weiqian Sea of the southern continent, so I came here. Lin Yi answered. "Junior brother Lin Yi, you're already an inner disciple?" Lu Bianren was slightly stunned when he heard the words, but then he understood. "That's right. With your current strength, you can even beat Sun Hongbiao. Not to mention being an inner disciple, you're more than enough to be an elder of the 3 pavilions." In the 3 pavilions of the North Island, a nascent soul expert had the opportunity to become an elder. With Lin Yi's current strength, he could even crush most of them. Chapter 4391. It's a win-win situation. Senior brother Lu, you've been missing for so long, and senior brother Ku, and the others are worried about you. I heard from the master of the Xinjiang Pavilion that you were here, and I saw a mission like this, so I came to try my luck. I didn't think I'd actually run into one. You, sigh. Lu Bianren pointed at Lin Yi and sighed. He was touched, but at the same time, he couldn't help but blame himself. Back in the Welcome Pavilion, I had the title of 3rd Pavilion Master for nothing, but I couldn't help you at all. Now I have caused you to worry for me. I can't feel at ease. Senior brother Lu, that's where you're wrong. It's rare for us to get along so well, and we're all on the same side. If we don't do anything when you suddenly disappear, wouldn't that be too inhumane? Linny said disapprovingly. You are right. But you don't have to take such a risk for me. What if you get yourself into trouble? Then I won't be able to forgive myself, even if I die 1,000 times. Lu Bianren said with lingering fear. Didn't I successfully get away? Anyway, the ending is a happy one. Besides, I came here for the trial mission, not to look for you. Senior brother Lu, don't take it to heart. Linny smiled. All right. Lu Bianren nodded helplessly. However, with his temperament, how could he let go of such a great kindness so easily? He just kept it in his heart and firmly remembered it. Then he asked, by the way, how is Kazanal now? Senior brother Ku is now the 3rd pavilion master of the Welcome Pavilion. He has Xiao Ran, Xiao Hongkai, and Li Jingming to help him. There should be no problem. Linny replied. Ku Zhongla became the 3rd pavilion master? The pavilion master of Xinjiang Pavilion nodded? Lu Bianren was shocked. The Welcoming Pavilion's 3rd pavilion lord position, no matter who it was, had to be approved by the Clear Cloud Pavilion's pavilion lord, Yu Xinjiang. Merely relying on his own hard work would not be able to gain Yu Xinjiang's recognition. Needless to say, Linny must have contributed to this. Lu Bianren looked at Linny in shock. As the pavilion master of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, Yu Xinjiang's judgment of people was not inferior to that of Shanghai Tianhua. This junior brother of his was truly a heaven-defying genius for Yu Xinjiang to appreciate him so much. If he knew that Linny was not only appreciated by Yu Xinjiang, but even Shanghai Tianhua, the Soaring Pavilion's pavilion master, attached great importance to him, and even treated him the same way as Ram Jie back then, Lu Bianren would probably faint on the spot. That's right, so we're all fine. Senior brother Lu, you don't have to worry. Linny nodded and asked, let's talk about you. How did you get captured by the Central Chamber of Commerce? This question had been asked in the dungeon before. At that time, Lu Bianren did not know that it was Linny, so he refused to elaborate. Linny naturally did not force him. After all, there were too many people, but now there was no such concern. Junior brother Linny, since you know about me from Pavilion Master Yu, then you should know what I'm doing here, right? Lu Bianren did not answer but asked. I know. Senior brother Lu, you came here in the name of a task. If I'm not wrong, it must be to find the news of Deputy Pavilion Master Yao. Linny nodded. Yes, I came to the South Continent this time. It's to inquire about Deputy Pavilion Master Yao Luanzhen. Lu Bianren said with a faint gaze. As far as I know, he also disappeared in this South Continent Sea, and before that, he actually came here to participate in a trial reward task organized by a person to repair an array. Repair array? Linny was surprised. This was the first time he heard Yao Luanzhen's full name, so he naturally did not know much about it. He could not help but ask curiously. So Deputy Pavilion Master Yao is an array master? On the Heaven Stage Island, compared to the highly respected alchemy, casting was already considered an unpopular industry. As for array masters, it was even more unpopular than casting. Basically, no one would talk about it. In fact, looking at the 5 great Heaven Stage Islands, not to mention array masters, even decent array masters were rare. Even if there were, it was only a very shallow protective array. As for the complex and exquisite teleportation arrays, 9 out of 10 were left behind many years ago. Until now, Linny had never heard of anyone who could make a teleportation array. It can't be said that he is an array master. In this era, the people who can really become an array master have basically disappeared. Although Deputy Pavilion Master, Yao has always been very interested in this aspect, and has been spending a lot of effort to study it, he can only be regarded as proficient in it. He can't personally arrange a truly exquisite and profound array. However, in terms of maintaining and repairing array, he is quite experienced. Lu Bianren explained. I see. Linny took a deep look at Lu Bianren. Listening to it, this Deputy Pavilion Master Yao and Lu Bianren were actually the same type of people. They didn't have great ambitions, but they both liked to ponder and research on their own. It was no wonder that the two of them got together. After all, birds of a feather flock together. Deputy Pavilion Master Yao has reached the point of being obsessed with arrays. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come all the way from the North Island to the South Continent, after seeing such a trial-reward mission? The reason is obvious. It is said that it is an extremely rare array, but I don't know the specifics. Lu Bianren spread his hands helplessly. Lenny nodded in agreement. Yao Luanjin, as the Vice Pavilion Lord of Clear Cloud Pavilion, was already a big shot in his own right. His status was not to be underestimated. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't even need to participate in a trial mission. With his status, he wouldn't care about this small reward. The only thing that really attracted him was the formation itself. And then, Lenny continued to ask. After many inquiries, I finally found some clues. The mysterious man who issued the task in the Cultivators Guild of the North Island once appeared in the Central Chamber of Commerce. So I inferred that this person was either an internal member of the Central Chamber of Commerce or had some kind of connection with the Central Chamber of Commerce. Lu Bianren said in full detail. It makes sense. The Central Chamber of Commerce suddenly rose overnight, giving people a feeling of mystery. It's normal that this kind of thing has something to do with them. Lenny agreed. Chapter 4392. Just asking a few questions and being arrested. Isn't it obvious that they have a guilty conscience? Lenny suddenly frowned. Any merchant would open their doors to welcome guests from all over the world. Even if someone came to their door to make trouble, they would still have to be patient. Who would be arrested just for asking for information? It would be strange to say that there was nothing fishy about this. What's more, the Central Chamber of Commerce captured so many people just to do human experiments. No matter how you look at it, such a disregard for human life does not fit with the normal Chamber of Commerce. It's more like a cult. I think so too. The questions I asked at the time were actually very vague, and I didn't mean to target them, but they still acted so sensitive. It can be seen that there must be something fishy behind it. Otherwise, why would they capture me? Lu Bianren said with certainty. Well, but in this case, this deputy pavilion leader Yao, who I have never met before, is probably dead. Maybe he has already been captured by them to do human experiments. Lenny could not help but feel worried and regretful. That's not necessarily true. Lu Bianren shook his head and said, Deputy Pavilion Leader Yao is a profound ascending stage master. These people in the Central Chamber of Commerce always only want gold core stage masters to do human experiments. They don't even want nascent soul stage masters, let alone profound ascending stage masters. What? Deputy Pavilion Leader Yao is a profound ascending stage master? Lenny was a little surprised. The first time he knew of a profound ascending stage master was when the Will of Heaven fought against Southern Aurora Polaris in Middle Island. At that time, Southern Aurora Polaris could already fight for the position of Middle Island Deputy Island Master, with just the strength of the early profound ascending stage. And after that, Lenny once again saw the glory of a profound ascending stage master. It was the three giants of Morning Star Academy. The Divine Nun of East Sea looked at Chung Katian, a gold core stage master, to death. That kind of shock was really impressive. So subconsciously, Lenny always felt that the giants of the profound ascending stage were unattainable, even if he encountered more than one profound ascending stage master in the Central Chamber of Commerce. But he never changed this thought. Yao Luanjin, as the deputy pavilion leader of the Blue Cloud Pavilion in the North Island, had a high status, but compared with the deputy island master of Middle Island, he was still inferior. What's more, he had the same temperament as Lu Bianren. He was completely immersed in the study of arrays, and was not the kind of person who would desperately cultivate to improve his strength. Lenny originally thought that his strength should be in the nascent soul realm, and it was very likely that he was at the peak of the nascent soul realm. This person was actually a mysterious ascended early stage expert. Lu Bianren saw through Lin Yi's doubts and explained with a smile, "That's right. Although Deputy Pavilion Leader Yao is obsessed with formations, he's actually very talented in cultivation. He used to be a famous super genius on the North Island. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to become the Deputy Pavilion Leader of Blue Cloud Pavilion. It's just that he's always kept a low profile and hasn't done anything sensational over the years, so he doesn't attract much attention." Lenny nodded. After thinking about it carefully, it suddenly dawned on him. Although the Blue Cloud Pavilion was at the bottom of the 3 pavilions in the North Island, it was at least a giant of the same level. The deputy pavilion leader of the Blue Cloud Pavilion was also a big shot standing at the top of the North Island. It was not surprising that he had the strength of the mysterious ascended early stage. Well, since deputy pavilion leader Yao is a mysterious ascended early stage expert, the possibility of being caught for human experiments is indeed much lower. Maybe he's really repairing the formation somewhere. Lenny pinched his chin and speculated. He had a vague feeling that the Central Chamber of Commerce, suddenly looking for someone to repair the formation, might not be a simple bait. It was true. People like Yao Luanzhen were not only strong enough, but also proficient in formations. For the Central Chamber of Commerce, he was a rare talent. The possibility of killing him was actually not high. According to normal logic, even if he was temporarily used up, he would not be killed. Instead, he would find an excuse to put him under house arrest, to prevent any problems with the formation in the future. Lenny was even speculating whether the formation that Yao Luanzhen was involved in repairing was related to the secular world. The most dazzling and special label of the Central Chamber of Commerce was that it could connect with the secular world. And the way of this connection must be some kind of extremely profound and complicated formation. Yao Luanzhen's participation in the repair may be the key to the rise of the Central Chamber of Commerce on the Heaven Stage Island. However, all this was still an unfounded speculation. Unless he really saw Yao Luanzhen and heard it from his mouth, that would be the truth. Maybe it's just that the Central Chamber of Commerce is so nervous about this matter that they can't even casually inquire about it. There are no clues at all. If we want to find Deputy Pavilion Master Yao, the difficulty is really tantamount to looking for a needle in a haystack. Lu Bianren shook his head and sighed. Yao Luanzhen was not only a backer who supported him, but the two were also extremely congenial best friends. The other party had disappeared for so long, and there was still no news. He was really worried that he couldn't sleep. This matter must be considered in the long run. The Central Chamber of Commerce has many masters, and they are dirty and evil. Once you are caught by them again, you won't be so lucky next time, so you must not act rashly. Lenny warned with a stern face. Yeah, I was too rash before. That's why I attracted their attention and fell into their hands. It's all thanks to you, Lenny, that I would have died this time. Lu Bianren sighed, feeling the lingering fear. If Lenny came a day later, or even just 2 hours later, the ending may be very different. It was very likely that he would have been dragged to do the so-called human experiment by now. Maybe he would have become a corpse. This is called God's will. Senior brother Lu, you are not destined to die. If you survive a disaster, you will have good fortune later. Lenny comforted him with a smile, and then said, but speaking of which, the Central Chamber of Commerce is indeed not easy to mess with. There's something strange about it from top to bottom. There's the secular market, human experiments, mysterious formations, and there's so many experts gathered here. There's even a profound ascending stage giant appearing out of nowhere. With our current strength, we're far from being able to fight them. Senior brother Lu, what are your plans next? Lu Bianren frowned and thought for a moment, then said, as you said, junior brother Lin Yi, with my strength, I can't even touch the Central Chamber of Commerce, let alone find Deputy Pavilion Master Yao. So in order not to cause you trouble, I'd better leave immediately and go back to the North Island first. Although Lu Bianren had a mild temperament, he was never a person who was afraid of trouble, and he would never run away in the face of a battle. It was actually very difficult for him to make this decision. Chapter 4393. This was an obvious fact. If it were someone else in his position, he might not be able to see it clearly in a short time, let alone accept it calmly. But Lu Bianren was different. He was sincerely thinking for Lin Yi, and he would never stay in the South Continent to do stupid things for the sake of his ridiculous self-esteem, which would implicate Lin Yi. Senior brother Lu, I'm glad you think so. Hearing this, Lin Yi let out a sigh of relief, and at the same time, he couldn't help but think more highly of Lu Bianren. He was afraid that Lu Bianren would be embarrassed, But he didn't expect Lu Bianren to be so straightforward. He nodded in agreement and said, "It's beyond my power now. Just bear it, and wait for a good opportunity in the future." "Well, junior brother, you're right. I'll leave now and go back to the North Island." Lu Bianren made a prompt decision. He knew that every moment he stayed in Devil Lung City was a moment of risk and hidden danger. Since he had decided to leave, he shouldn't hesitate. It was better to leave before the Central Chamber of Commerce fully reacted. "Senior brother Lu, wait." Lin Yi hurriedly stopped him and said, "The power of the Central Chamber of Commerce is beyond our imagination. Once they react, their people will be everywhere. Senior brother Lu, if you go out like this, you'll be too obvious a target. It's very likely that you won't even be able to get out of the dock, and you'll be walking into a tiger's mouth again." Lin Yi had been wearing the thousand silk mask before. Now that he took it off, he was a completely different person, and nothing would happen when he went out. But Lu Bianren was different. He had been locked in the dungeon for so long, and he had just escaped from it. The people of the Central Chamber of Commerce must have some impression of him. As long as the dock was blocked, if Lu Bianren went out like this, he would definitely walk into a trap. Lu Bianren also hesitated. He didn't want to involve Lin Yi or Lin Yi, but he wasn't so fearless that he would take the initiative to die. Otherwise, why would Lin Yi spend so much effort to save him? But if he stayed here, the risk was not small. The risk was also not small. In the eyes of others, the Central Chamber of Commerce was just a newly risen large-scale chamber of commerce. But Lu Bianren and the others who had seen the dark inside stories had a much deeper understanding of the power of the Central Chamber of Commerce than others. If the people from the Central Chamber of Commerce really wanted to chase after him, once they really mobilized a large force, Lu Bianren would be discovered sooner or later if he continued to hide here. There was no room for luck at all. If he left now, there was a high chance that he would be stuck at the dock. However, it was also possible that someone would come knocking on his door. For a moment, Lu Bianren was caught in a dilemma. Just as they were in a dilemma, there was a sudden knock on the door. Lin Yi and Lu Bianren couldn't help but be startled at the same time. The first thought that popped into their minds was that the people from the Central Chamber of Commerce had caught up so quickly. "Who?" Lin Yi gave Lu Bianren a wink, signaling him to hide in his room, and asked in a deep voice, "Brother Ling." "It was me." Qi Wenhan's voice came from outside the door. Lin Yi let out a sigh of relief. He went to open the door and let Qi Wenhan in. "Aya, Brother Ling, I finally found you. Why did you leave by yourself first? I thought you had suddenly disappeared, making me worry for nothing." Qi Wenhan was in a hurry, both surprised and complaining. Previously, on the second floor of the Central Chamber of Commerce, he had just asked a few words with the shop assistant, and when he turned his head, Lin Yi had disappeared. At that time, his first reaction was that Lin Yi had gone up to the third floor. He wanted to chase after Lin Yi, but was stopped by the shop assistant, who said that the third floor was a private area and was not open to people outside of the Central Chamber of Commerce. At that time, Qi Wenhan didn't think much of it. Since the third floor was not open to the public, Lin Yi must have gone back to the first floor. After all, the goods on the first floor were much more interesting, and it was more interesting just to look at them. However, when Qi Wenhan went down to the first floor and walked around, he still couldn't find Lin Yi. Even when he left the Central Chamber of Commerce and walked around the main street of Emolung City, he still couldn't find Lin Yi. Later, when he returned to the inn, there was still no trace of Lin Yi. This time, Qi Wenhan was really anxious. For the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, Lin Yi was not only a great benefactor, but also an honorary escort leader. More importantly, in the upcoming South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event, they were counting on Lin Yi to help the agency fight for a good ranking. How could he suddenly disappear? If Lin Yi just went out to play, it would be fine. As long as nothing happened to him, everything would be fine. However, the problem was that although this Emolung City seemed to be much more orderly than Wei Arc City, it was still the South Continent Sea after all, and the nature of chaos could not be changed. If a stranger like Lin Yi appeared here, he might be targeted by some local bully. No matter how strong Lin Yi was, he was only one person. Moreover, he was not at the level of a mysterious ascending stage giant who could easily suppress an area. Once he was surrounded by people, he would be at a great disadvantage. If something were to happen to Lin Yi here, then he, Qi Wenhan, wouldn't be able to absolve himself of the blame, even if he died 10,000 times. He probably wouldn't even be able to keep his position as the young master anymore. After all, he was the one who first suggested going out to play. If something were to happen to Lin Yi because of this, then he would become the biggest sinner of the entire Equal Heaven Escort Agency. In just a short period of 4 to 6 hours, the news of Lin Yi's disappearance had already spread throughout the agency. Even housekeeper Song was preparing to arrange for everyone to go out and search for him. The only thing left was to call Qi Mingyuan, the head escort leader, back. As for Qi Wenhan, he was frantically searching everywhere. He had walked the road between the Central Chamber of Commerce and the inn at least 7 or 8 times. He was really anxious. If he still could not find Lin Yi, he could not wait to find Qi Mingyuan to apologize. Fortunately, he had just heard from the waiter that someone had returned from Lin Yi's room. That was why he hurried over to check on the situation. When he saw that Lin Yi was standing there safe and sound, he immediately let out a sigh of relief. His whole body felt deflated. "I'm sorry to have made you worry, Brother Qi." Lin Yi saw how worried Qi Wenhan was, and felt a little touched. It had happened so suddenly that he couldn't help it, but he still felt a little bad about it. "I saw that you were really engrossed, so I went downstairs myself. I didn't think that I'd run into someone I knew, so I left after a few words. I'm really sorry." The reason why Lin Yi did not tell the truth was mainly because he did not want to drag the Heavens Equal Escort Agency into this. The Central Chamber of Commerce's power was too great. A mere Heavens Equal Escort Agency was not a match at all, and would only be caught in the crossfire. Hey, what's wrong with that? Of course, old friends should chat a little longer when they meet. Qi Wenhan waved his hand indifferently and said magnanimously, "It's good that you're fine. I was just worried that Brother Ling would run into Cheng Haonan and the others from the Poison Eye mercenary band. They might come looking for trouble with you. After all, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands." Chapter 4394. Haha, that's not true. Lin Yi smiled nonchalantly. Compared to the huge threat of the Central Chamber of Commerce, the Poison Eye mercenary group was child's play. Lin Yi didn't take them seriously at all. That's good, that's good. Qi Wenhan nodded repeatedly. After being nervous for so long, he finally relaxed. "Oh right, Brother Qi, I want to trouble you to do me a favor." Lin Yi suddenly made a request with a serious expression. "Brother Ling, don't be like this. We're on the same side. Why would I trouble you? If you need anything, just tell me. I'll go through fire and water to get it done for you." Qi Wenhan patted his chest and said, "I want to use the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency's channels to secretly escort someone back to Weiwan City, then go back to the North Island. Is that okay?" Lin Yi asked. "Secretly escort someone?" Qi Wenhan was stunned, then nodded without hesitation and said, "Of course, that's not a problem. Our Equal of Heaven Escort Agency does this. It's not a problem to escort someone. But Brother Ling, who is this person?" "Senior Brother Lu, come out." Lin Yi smiled and called Lu Bianren out from the inner room. He introduced the 2 of them and said, "This is my senior brother Lu Bianren from the Blue Cloud Pavilion in the North Island. This is the young master of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, Qi Wenhan." "Nice to meet you." Lu Bianren and Qi Wenhan saluted each other at the same time. "Brother Ling, is this Brother Lu the acquaintance you met at the Central Chamber of Commerce? Previously, our escort agency couldn't find it no matter how hard we tried. But in the end, the 2 of you ran into it. How can there be such a coincidence in this world?" Qi Wenhan looked Lu Bianren up and down with a look of realization. Like Wu Baoliang, Lu Bianren was the target that Lin Yi asked them to find. "Haha, it's really a coincidence." Lin Yi smiled and said, "Senior Brother Lu came to the South Island to carry out a mission a few months ago. Because of some unforeseen circumstances, he has been staying here. The brothers in the North Island are all worried about him. That's why I want to ask Brother Qi to use the security agency's channels to send senior brother Lu back as soon as possible. Well said, well said. Brother Ling's business is the business of the escort agency. It's just delivering a person, there's no need to ask for anything. Brother Ling, you're treating me like an outsider. Qi Wenhan laughed heartily. In fact, with his shrewdness, he could more or less guess that there must be some hidden story behind this. It was just that it was inconvenient for Lin Yi to talk about it in detail. Otherwise, there would be no need to deliberately mention a secret escort. However, he would not pursue the matter further. After all, everyone had their own things to do. If he made things difficult for Lin Yi and the others because of him asking too many questions, then he could only slap himself in the face. In the escort agency business, one should only ask questions that should be asked, and absolutely not ask questions that should not be asked. This was the most basic rule. Otherwise, not only would they offend the client, they might even invite a disaster for no reason. As the young master of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, Qi Wenhan was very clear about this point. Then, I'll leave senior brother Lu to brother Qi. Lin Yi did not bother with pleasantries. He turned his head and said to Lu Bianren, Senior brother Lu, I still have things to do here in the South Continent. I won't go back with you for now. Tell senior brother Ku and the others good news for me, so they don't have to worry about me. Yes, junior brother, you have to be more careful. Although there's an old saying that the skilled are bold, the other party is really not to be underestimated. You must not act rashly when you're alone. It's best to go back and report this matter to the higher-ups, and then think about it at length. Lu Bianren warned with some worry. Due to Qi Wenhan's presence, he could not directly point out the Central Chamber of Commerce. However, Lin Yi naturally understood what he meant. With the terrifying strength displayed by the Central Chamber of Commerce, it was impossible to shake it with just the strength of a few people. Only by mobilizing the entire 3 pavilions of the North Island could they barely have the confidence to contend with it. Senior brother Lu, don't worry, I know what to do. Lin Yi nodded. Although he often fought with his life on the line, he was not a person who liked to fight. It was fine if he did not know before. But now that he knew that the Central Chamber of Commerce was full of masters, and he could easily meet a mysterious ascending stage giant, why would Lin Yi rashly provoke them again? He was not stupid. That's good. Let's meet again in the North Island. Lu Bianren cupped his hands and said goodbye to Lin Yi. Okay, let's meet again in the North Island. There's no time to lose. Brother Qi, arrange for senior brother Lu to leave now. Lin Yi said immediately. Okay, brother Lu, come with me. Qi Wenhan immediately brought Lu Bianren out. As one of the 5 largest escort agencies in the South Continent, the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency naturally had its own specialized logistics channels. Secretly escorting a person out was a simple matter, and no one from any faction would be able to detect it. After sending Lu Bianren away, Lin Yi finally had one less thing to worry about. This was the main purpose of his trip to the South Continent. As for hunting down Wu Baoliang, it was just a secondary matter. In the next few days, Lin Yi stayed in his room and did not go out. The only thing he did every day was to meditate and cultivate. This time, he suddenly saw so many masters in the Central Chamber of Commerce, especially the mysterious ascending stage giants. It really stimulated Lin Yi, and the pressure was self-evident. Although he was not a person who liked to fight, he had a strong desire to win. He had always been unwilling to fall behind others, otherwise, he would not have reached this level today. At present, it was obviously unrealistic for Lin Yi to reach the level of the mysterious ascending stage in a short period of time. Even if there was such a shortcut, he would not take it. Pressure was pressure, but being down to earth and well-grounded was the way to go. Therefore, the only thing that Lin Yi had to do now was to concentrate on his cultivation. The thicker his foundation, the better it was, and quietly wait for the opportunity to break through. Moreover, after the incident at the Central Chamber of Commerce, although Lin Yi had the 1,000 silk mask to deceive others, he still could not wander outside at this sensitive time, just in case. After all, he had only put on the 1,000 silk mask at the last minute when he was discovered. Previously, he had been loitering around the first and second floors with his original appearance. So many employees had seen it. With the astonishing power displayed by the Central Chamber of Commerce, who knew if they would be able to find out? Anyway, there was nothing to do outside, so Lenny simply did not go out. He cultivated behind closed doors, while waiting for the start of the South Continent Escort Agency. In addition, Lenny also specifically reminded Chi Wen-han that if it was not necessary, it was best not to go out during this time. In the face of such an unfathomable Central Chamber of Commerce, no matter how careful he was, he could not be too careful. If the Central Chamber of Commerce could really find out Lin Yi's original appearance, then they would naturally be able to find out that Lin Yi appeared with Chi Wen-han. It would not be good if Chi Wen-han was implicated because of this. Chapter 4395. One must always be on guard against others, not to mention that those people were notorious for being sinister. It was always good to be careful. It was better to avoid these kinds of things that might cause trouble. Chi Wen-han, as the young master of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, although he had some of the habits of a young master, he was a steady person who knew the big picture. Since Lanny had specifically reminded him, he might as well go into seclusion and focus on studying the information of his competitors. He wanted to strive for a good position in the upcoming Southern Continent Escort Agency event. Lanny carefully went into seclusion. He thought that his identity was hidden enough that he should not be discovered. However, he never thought that the Central Chamber of Commerce knew him far more than he imagined. At this moment, on the third floor of the Central Chamber of Commerce, the man in black and Ma Tianlang were still there. However, both of them were not qualified to sit in the main seat. Instead, they stood aside in fear and trepidation. Their backs were drenched in cold sweat. The person sitting in the main seat was a woman, and behind her stood a mysterious man covered in a black bamboo hat. Wang Deyuan, you are the shopkeeper of the Moling branch, and also the person in charge of this area. What happened this time? Explain it to me clearly. The woman's voice was very calm, as if there was no emotion, but the atmosphere in the room suddenly became stagnant. This was not a substantial suppression of momentum, but simply the aura of a superior brought about by power. Even though he was a profound ascending stage master, whose strength was beyond the reach of Lin Yi, he could not help but shrink his neck. He did not even dare to breathe, for fear of causing the woman's dissatisfaction. The Wang Deyuan that the woman mentioned was Ma Tianlang's boss. The man in black became more and more nervous, and even began to tremble uncontrollably. This subordinate. Wang Deyuan stammered, unable to say anything for a long time. You don't know? Or you don't want to say it? The woman frowned slightly, and her eyes flashed with killing intent. It seems that you don't want to continue being the shopkeeper, right? That's fine, my lab is in need of volunteers. Although profound ascending stage masters have not been included in the research scope, it will happen sooner or later. Why don't I let you have a taste first? No, I wouldn't dare. Wang Deyuan was so frightened that he quickly knelt down. The success rate of human experimentation was extremely low. Once one was listed as a test target, 9.5 out of 10 would die. He still wanted to live a happy and carefree life. Then why don't you hurry up and say it? Could it be that you still want to shirk responsibility after such a major incident has occurred? The woman berated coldly. With her status in the organization, there was no need for her to ask about such trivial matters. Even if a branch of a Central Chamber of Commerce was destroyed, she wouldn't need to show up personally. However, this incident had caused dozens of test samples to run away all at once. This was undoubtedly a huge blow to her experiments that were at a critical stage. Even she couldn't help but feel anxious. Up until now, Wang Deyuan still hadn't fully understood the situation. However, if he couldn't come up with an explanation at this time, his fate would be bleak. He could only bite the bullet and say, I heard that it was a martial artist that was recently captured. He seemed to have used some sort of powerful technique to blow up the dungeon. Wang Deyuan had only heard these words from others, and the words were vague, and he didn't know whether it was true or not. If it was proven to be true later, then it would be fine. But if it was false, then today's matter would be huge. The other party would really take him to do human experiments in a fit of anger. What exactly is going on? Tell me clearly. The woman frowned and snorted coldly. Who the hell did you hear this from? Who is that martial artist? What is his strength? What kind of technique did he use to be powerful enough to blow up the dungeon that was reinforced by a protective formation? The protective facilities of this dungeon had already been considered at the beginning of the design, because it was to concentrate on imprisoning Golden Core Stage Masters. The power of the protective formation was enough to resist a higher-level nascent Soul Stage Master. As long as it wasn't a profound ascending Stage Master, in theory it was foolproof. Who would have thought that such a thing would happen? This is what the person we captured said. Wang Diyuan stammered, cold sweat dripping down his forehead. This incident was indeed due to his incompetence. Otherwise, if he really wanted to investigate, the truth would have come to light long ago. However, he had not been in Imolung City for the past 2 days. He was busy competing with other branches for the supply of secular goods. How could he have the time to care about his family's affairs? How could he have thought that there would suddenly be a fire in his backyard? He was the manager of the branch. If he managed the branch well, not only would it be a political achievement, but he could also take the opportunity to take advantage of the situation and make a lot of money from it. In contrast, although the dungeon that imprisoned many Golden Core Stage Masters was also within his scope of responsibility, because there was no profit to be made, he had never paid special attention to it. However, now that such a big thing had happened, Wang Diyuan regretted it. Although there was no profit to be made in the dungeon, this was a project that the whole organization attached great importance to. If there was an accident, and it couldn't be remedied in time, then he would really lose his head. Just like now, he had made such a big mess, but there was no way to deal with the aftermath. His life was completely in the hands of the woman. Life or death, it was all in the hands of the woman. Where is that person? Bring him here. The woman frowned and said. She could also see that Wang Diyuan did not know the inside story. Instead of continuing to ask this muddle-headed guy, it was better to interrogate him personally. Wang Diyuan suddenly trembled, and with a bitter face, he did not dare to raise his head and said, That person has been sent to do human experiments. At that time, when the dungeon was blown up, although there were masters who stayed behind to catch people from all directions, after all, there were too few people, and there were too many people who escaped from the dungeon. Every one of them was a Golden Core Stage Master. When they risked their lives, their speed of escape was not small. Moreover, they fled in different directions, so the number of people who were really caught was actually very limited. And with the idea of reducing the big problem to a small one, this matter was not reported at the first time. After all, for Wang Diyuan and the others, as long as this matter was known by the higher-ups, it would be a big mistake. But if they took advantage of the fact that before the higher-ups received the news, they could quickly catch more Golden Core Stage Masters to fill in the test samples, then they could make up for their mistakes. Coincidentally, now was the critical stage of the experiment, and the requirements for the samples were especially high. Therefore, those who were caught had already been sent to do human experiments as usual. Now they were probably already dead bodies. Chapter 4396. The key to all this was to capture a Gold Core Stage Master as soon as possible, and at the same time, to avoid being discovered by the higher-ups. Unfortunately, Wang Diyuan underestimated the intelligence network of the higher-ups. How could he hide such a big movement even if he wanted to? If it was a normal time, as the person in charge of this area, he really had a chance to hide it. Unfortunately, the mysterious man standing next to the woman was the number 2 person of the organization on Heaven Stage Island, and he happened to be carrying out a mission here during this period of time. Bastard! The woman raised her leg and kicked Wang Diyuan right in the face, sending him flying. She was really angry. She wasn't afraid of a godlike opponent, but she was afraid of a pig-like subordinate. This Wang Diyuan was simply a fucking pig-like pig. Miss Luan, do you need to clean up the sect? The mysterious man said faintly. His body was full of killing intent. Fuck. Wang Diyuan, who was kicked out, was horrified. Ma Tianlang, who was still kneeling in the room, was even more frightened. Looking at the mysterious man under the black cloak and bamboo hat, his eyes were about to bleed. Is this guy serious? The woman's gaze fell on the two of them, and it seemed that she had the same intention. Losing two profound ascending stage masters was a major event for other forces. But for their organization, it was far from so serious. If the woman nodded, Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlong's heads would immediately fall to the ground. Although they were both profound ascending stage masters, in front of a powerful organization, under the eyes of this mysterious man, there was no chance for them to escape. Otherwise, this mysterious man would not have become the second most powerful person in the heavenly stage island. Wait, there is still one who is not dead. He was not sent to be experimented. Ma Tianlang suddenly had an idea and shouted. Really? The woman showed a little doubt. Even Wang Deyuan was panicking. While they were panicking, they were also secretly surprised. They thought that Ma Tianlang had made it up at the last minute to save his life, because he wasn't at the dark cold sea when the incident happened. The only person who was in charge of the situation at that time was his deputy, Ma Tianlang, and he was the only one who knew about the incident best. It's true. There is a nascent soul stage among the people who were captured. He is not used for human experiments, so he should still be locked up now. Ma Tianlang said quickly. Yes, there is one. That nascent soul stage cultivator has been locked up by us for a long time. Wang Deyuan finally reacted and nodded repeatedly. Then why aren't you bringing it over? Do you really want to die? Can't you see that Miss Luan is already angry? The mysterious man standing beside the woman snorted coldly. Yes. Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang didn't dare to neglect it. They regarded it as the last straw to clutch at. They hurriedly rushed out to get them. After a while, the nascent soul stage expert that the two had mentioned was brought in with a face full of fear. It was Sun Hengbiao. As a nascent soul stage expert, it was actually possible for him to successfully escape. He was far stronger than the other golden core stage experts. Unfortunately, he had been beaten half to death by Linny earlier, and his strength had been greatly reduced. Thus, he was unable to escape quickly. In addition, he was a conspicuous target, so he was the first to be targeted by the expert guards who had rushed back. He was escorted by Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang. Stumbling into the room, he stole a glance at the woman and the mysterious man. Sun Hengbiao very consciously plopped down on his knees. After all, he wasn't a fool. He knew that he could be rude and unreasonable in front of others. But if he didn't cooperate in front of these people, he would definitely be seeking his own death. Tell me, how was the dungeon broken into? The woman's tone was unpredictable. Oh, Sun Hengbiao shrunk his neck and replied carefully. It was a martial artist who had just been locked up. I don't know exactly how strong he is, but he must be very strong. A middle stage nascent soul stage was no match for him at all. We had a small scuffle at the beginning, but in the end, I was beaten to the ground by him. Get to the point. The woman frowned slightly. She just wanted to know who caused her so much trouble. As for the personal grudges of a small fry like Sun Hengbiao, she couldn't be bothered to care. Yes, that person meditated quietly at the beginning, but after the two guards took one person away, he must have made sure that there was no one outside the door. He suddenly asked us to retreat behind him, and he himself activated an extremely terrifying move. I swear I've never seen such a strange martial art in my life. The destructive power was really rare. After that, there was a huge explosion in the dungeon. Then it was blown up, Sun Hengbiao said in full detail. In front of these people, he didn't dare to hide anything. Oh, you mean that person activated a very destructive move, and just by activating it with his hands, there was a huge explosion? The woman couldn't help but be slightly startled. Yes, that feeling was very strange. It was as if he had been preparing for a long time, and then suddenly exploded. I've never seen such a martial art. Sun Hengbiao himself was also confused. After all, he was a master in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. At least he could see that this was definitely a move that Lin Yi had prepared in private, and it didn't seem like it was activated on the spur of the moment. Otherwise, if it was really that powerful, then this person would be comparable to a giant in the mysterious ascending stage. How could he have been captured in the first place? When the woman heard this, she turned her head and looked at the mysterious man. There was obviously a hint of surprise in their eyes. It was obvious that they had discovered something, and at the same time, they had some suspicions. About this person, tell me everything you know, such as what characteristics this person has, or any details that left a deep impression on you. If you hide anything, you should know what the consequences will be, the woman continued to ask. Yes, I won't dare to hide anything. Sun Hengbiao hurriedly swore, and then carefully thought about it and said, if you want to talk about characteristics, this person has no other characteristics besides being strong and having a rough and boorish face. However, this person's temperament and his appearance give people a strange feeling. You mean this person's temperament and appearance don't match? The woman nodded thoughtfully and said with an inscrutable expression, continue. Oh yes, there is another thing that is very strange about this person. He seems to take special care of someone, although there is no special communication between them. In fact, there is a bias very obvious. Sun Hengbiao suddenly patted his head and said, I don't know whether it was intentional or not. That person deliberately sat next to the one surnamed Liu. Before, when the guard came in to take people away, according to the rules, it should have been the surnamed Liu's turn, but that person glared at me and forced me to change it to someone else. Chapter 4397. Hearing Sun Hengbiao's words, the woman did not have any reaction, but the mysterious man's eyes suddenly narrowed for some reason. Also, if I remember correctly, after the dungeon was blown up, that person seemed to be running with that Liu guy. There must be something fishy going on between the two of them, hee. Sun Hengbiao was getting more and more excited as he spoke. Wait a minute. What's the name of the Liu you mentioned? The mysterious man suddenly asked. Let me think. Sun Hengbiao frowned and thought for a long time, then finally slapped his head and said, I think he's called Liu Bianren. Liu Bianren. The mysterious man's eyes suddenly flashed, and the corner of his mouth curled up into a playful smile. Do you know this person? The woman could not help but ask. The mysterious man nodded without batting an eyelid. He glanced at Wang Diyuan and the others, but did not say much. Hearing this, he had already guessed the truth, but there were too many people, so he naturally would not say it in front of these people. The few of you can leave for now. The woman understood tacitly, and immediately ordered everyone to leave. Sun Hengbiao did not say anything, but Wang Diyuan and Ma Tianlang were both overjoyed. They thought that they had made such a big mess this time. Even if they did not die, they would lose a layer of skin. But looking at it, this Miss Luan did not seem to have any special intention to pursue the matter. The two of them immediately thanked her profusely and hurriedly dragged Sun Hengbiao out. In the room, only Miss Luan and the mysterious man were left. This Liu Bianren, if I'm not mistaken, is a disciple of the Blue Cloud Pavilion in the North Island. When he was the third pavilion master of the Welcome Pavilion, I heard that he had a very close relationship with Lin Yi. The mysterious man said slowly. Oh, Liu Bianren and Lin Yi have a close relationship, so that means that Wu Fu is likely Lin Yi? Miss Luan nodded. In fact, before this, she had already speculated in this regard. After all, she had been paying attention to Lin Yi for a long time. Yes, at least 90% likely. According to what this person said, the move that destroyed the dungeon was very similar to the alchemic fire bomb. Among the people the subordinate has seen, there are only two people who are proficient in this extremely rare technique. One is Kong Ming, who is now a member of our center, and he is now in the North Island, so we can rule him out. The other one is Lin Yi. The mysterious man said with certainty. He has a close relationship with Liu Bianren, and also knows how to use the pill fire bomb. Judging from this Wu Fu must be Lin Yi. Miss Luan concluded. There's one more thing that can be proved. Although this person looks like a martial artist, the feeling he gives off doesn't match his temperament. This means that this person is likely to be wearing a disguise, which is Lin Yi in disguise. The mysterious man nodded, Then he said, "Moreover, I went to the Lufing forest to look for the infant ginseng. In fact, I had already found the traces of the infant ginseng, but it was one step ahead of me. At that time, there were traces of a pill firebomb left at the scene. If I'm not wrong, it should be Lenny who did it. These things might be suspicious if they were taken apart and looked at individually, but when they were all gathered together, all the arrows pointed to the same person. Then there was no need to doubt anymore. This person must be Lenny. Hee, this guy is a little interesting. I really don't know whether he did it on purpose or not. He actually came to ruin our business again and again." Miss Luan couldn't help laughing. From her expression at the moment, others couldn't tell whether she was happy or angry. "Miss Luan, why don't I go there myself?" the mysterious man suggested. It didn't matter if it was intentional or not. Letting Lenny do whatever he wanted wasn't a good thing for them. They didn't know what kind of trouble he'd cause in the future if they didn't do something about it. No, Lenny must be kept alive. He will be of great use in the future. This is something Dr. Lee specifically told me. I can't violate it. Anyway, it's not a big deal. If he wants to make a mess, then so be it. Let him be. Miss Luan shook her head slightly. But Lenny, he has done amazing things again and again. Don't look at his current strength. I have a hunch that it won't be long before he becomes a big problem for us. At that time, it won't be so easy to deal with him. The mysterious man was a little worried. He seemed to know Lenny very well. With his level of strength, under normal circumstances, he wouldn't pay attention to a gold core stage master like Lenny. He would only treat him as a lowly ant that could be crushed to death. Even if this ant made a little trouble, it would not be able to change the overall situation. However, for some reason, this mysterious man's attention to Lin Yi had far exceeded the level of treating ordinary ants. He said that it was as if he was facing a great enemy. Why? With your talent and strength, why would you be afraid of such a junior? This is really strange. Miss Luan couldn't help but laugh. Now on the Heaven Stage Island, it was true that she was in charge of the overall situation. But this mysterious man was one of the chief confidants. His position in the organization was actually very high. He could reach his current level completely by relying on his super talent and strength. In the face of him, no tycoon dared to underestimate him. He was an extraordinary person. It was inevitable that the mysterious man was also a person with high standards. Not to mention ordinary people, even a profound ascending stage master would be afraid of him. However, now he only treated a gold core stage master like Lenny differently. He even expressed his fear in his heart. This kind of thing, even Miss Luan had heard of it. I'm not afraid. It's just that my intuition tells me that Lenny can't be underestimated. In order to avoid future trouble, it's best to nip the hidden danger in the bud. The mysterious man said sternly. As Miss Luan said, with his talent and strength, he never needed to be afraid of anyone. Any master, including those legendary masters, could only be surpassed by him, and no one had ever been able to surpass him. However, conceit was conceit. At the same time, the mysterious man had absolute rationality. He would never make mistakes because of conceit, and he would never underestimate the enemy because of conceit. Otherwise, if he was really the kind of person who looked down on others with a little bit of strength, it would be impossible for him to achieve his current status and level in an organization full of masters. That's right, but this Lenny can't die at the moment. Once he dies, it will be meaningless. This is not only an order from Dr. Lee, but also a consideration of the situation. Seeing the severity of the mysterious man's words, Miss Luan explained seriously. If something happens to Lin Yi, especially if it's in our hands, it's very likely that those people will be driven to desperation and kill themselves. That'll be big trouble. Chapter 4398. Those people. The mysterious man's eyes flashed when he heard this. Of course, he knew who Miss Luan was referring to. At the same time, he also knew how terrifying those people's strength was. Yes, the situation between us and those people is still maintaining a delicate balance. We are confronting each other, and don't dare to act rashly. It's not that we can't, But we don't want to. Miss Wan analyzed. Because the mysterious man had been performing tasks on Heaven Stage Island and had never left. She knew more about these things than the mysterious man. The mysterious man couldn't help but be silent. Although he was afraid of Lin Yi, who was rising rapidly, this was only a trivial matter when considered at the level of the entire organization. The situation of the confrontation between the two sides was the most important thing to consider. The current situation is that no matter which side wants to devour the other, the final result will be mutual destruction. So no matter how tense it seems, both sides have actually maintained a tacit understanding. After all, no one is stupid. If there isn't enough fuse, no one will want to inexplicably perish together with the other. Miss Wan deliberately paused and then warned sternly, however, if you make a move against Lin Yi, I am afraid that it will ignite the fuse, and then it will really lead to this unprecedented battle. So, not only can we not deal with Lin Yi now, but we also have to protect him at the critical moment. The mysterious man couldn't help but have a headache. He rubbed his temples with one hand and said, "Previously, I was asked to protect him because of this? Yes, this matter is kept between you and me. It is a highly confidential matter. It must not be known by a third person except you and me. You know Professor Li's means." Miss Wan reminded him coldly. "As for how to treat this Lin Yi in the future and what to do with him, I haven't received any news from Professor Li yet. Let's wait and see." Yes, the mysterious man still had doubts in his heart. He had a vague feeling that something would happen to this hidden danger. But since the higher-ups had already given such an order, he couldn't just defy the order because of such an uncertain doubt. Although he could summon the wind and summon the rain on Heaven Stage Island, one word from Professor Li could make him die a miserable death. He had already attached great importance to Lin Yi, but even so, he had never thought that Lin Yi's identity would be so crucial and sensitive. Pulling one hair would affect the whole body. Lin Yi was actually standing between two major forces, an important figure at the heart of the storm. In any case, with Lin Yi's current strength, he alone is far from being able to pose a threat to us. Let's not bother about him for the time being. Our top priority now is to focus on our development plan. This is the foundation that can truly influence the situation in the future. You have to be clear about your priorities. You must not be distracted by a mere Lin Yi. Miss Wan said resolutely. I understand. The mysterious man nodded. In the end, Lin Yi was just a possible hidden danger. There were many geniuses these days, and more than 90% of them were dazzling in the early stage. However, once they entered a higher level, they would lack momentum and eventually fade into the crowd. Lin Yi might not be able to escape this fate. What's more, even if Lin Yi could really grow up, the threat that he could create alone was very limited after all. On the contrary, if this extremely critical human experiment could be done successfully, the organization would be invincible from then on. They could break the balance in one fell swoop. At that time, Lin Yi would not have any time and opportunity to grow at all. The war would end early, and things would be settled. Bring Wang Diyuan and Ma Tianling in. Although there was a mess this time, the human experiment still has to continue. Miss Wan ordered. The mysterious man nodded and immediately called Wang Diyuan and Ma Tianling, who were guarding outside in. Miss Wan, Wang Diyuan, and Ma Tianling greeted her respectfully. The two of them were still trembling with fear, as though they were walking on thin ice. Although Ma Tianling had pulled Sun Hengbiao out in a moment of desperation, and it seemed to have dispelled the anger of the superior, being in the king's company was like being with a tiger. Who knew what Miss Wan was thinking? If she was really determined to kill the chicken to warn the monkey, the two of them would not be able to escape death. You too. I don't need to say more about how big the mess this time is, right? Miss Wan said expressionlessly. Because we did not get the infant ginseng, our experiment was already very difficult. Now that we are at a critical stage, so many test samples suddenly ran away, and even the progress of the entire experiment will be greatly delayed. Miss Wan, we know our mistake. We will go and catch them now. We guarantee that the experiment will not be delayed. Wang Diyuan and Ma Tianling quickly knelt down, patted their chests and promised. If they did not do something quickly to atone for their mistake, If Miss Luan wanted to settle the score later, the two of them would really have a bad ending. This time they were really desperate. Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang had just discussed privately outside, and they were ready to personally go outside to catch the people. With the strength of the two Xianxing stage masters, catching a few gold core stage masters was a piece of cake. As long as there was a suitable target, it was not difficult to catch dozens of them. This approach, in order to prevent suspicion, they would not do it before. Generally, they had to find a reason that was not too suspicious, like those people who were locked in the dungeon before. But now there was no other way. The human experiment was short of samples. If it was delayed for too long, it was difficult to guarantee that Miss Luan would not be angry. They had to choose the lesser of two evils, so they could only take some risks. Wait, are you two mentally retarded or retarded? Miss Luan frowned. Ah! Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang were suddenly stunned, and looked at each other. Before this, we have already caught hundreds of gold core stage masters in the magic cold sea. Although the sea in the South Continent is notoriously chaotic, and no one will intervene even if a few of them are killed in public. But after a long time, have you not thought that it will arouse the suspicion of other big forces? Going out to catch a large number of people at this time, don't you think it is not big enough? Miss Luan looked at the two of them, completely looking at them, as if they were looking at idiots. Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang's mouth twitched. The two of them were only thinking about how to atone for their mistake. As long as they could get past Miss Luan, who the fuck cares whether those forces will be suspicious or not? In their opinion, these so-called big forces could only show off their power in the local area. In front of the experts, they were nothing. Chapter 4399. The North Island was the first to carry out human experiments. So far, it is also the place with the most missing gold core stage cultivators. Now it has attracted the attention of the top management of the 3 pavilions in the North Island. The incident has been secretly reported to the Law Enforcement Hall for investigation, so the North Island can only stop temporarily. I don't know how long the South Continent can last. The mysterious man stood beside Miss Luan and said lightly, "This experiment is our top priority in the Heaven Stage Island, and it is also the key trump card for us to take the initiative in the future. So it must be carried out in strict secrecy, and must not be discovered by the outside world. It is not difficult to destroy those local forces on the Heaven Stage Island, but once the news is leaked, everything we have done before will be in vain." Miss Luan nodded. "We are ignorant, and almost ruined the organization's plan. Please forgive us, Miss Luan." Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianling quickly apologized. You are not only ignorant, you are simply stupid. You can't even watch a group of gold core stage cultivators. You are simply trash. Miss Luan said coldly, "The fact that these people have run away, and that the test samples are broken is secondary. What we should be worried about now is whether the news of our human experiments will spread through these people's mouths, causing panic and attention from other forces. These people who ran away are afraid that the news will leak out, and they will be caught again. They should not dare to spread it around in a short time, but after a long time, it is hard to say." The mysterious man also frowned. "Don't worry, Miss Luan. I will do my best to hunt them down. When these people were caught, their identities were recorded. With our organization's intelligence network in power, it should not be too difficult to hunt them down," Wang Deyuan hurriedly guaranteed. "Well, I will leave this matter to you. Never let the news leak out. If you can't catch them alive, then kill these people. Remember, this is your last chance to save yourself. If you can't do it well, don't come back to see me," Miss Luan said coldly. "Also forget about Wu Fu and Lu Bianren. You don't need to catch them." Yes, we will definitely make up for our mistakes." Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang were so scared that they were drenched in cold sweat, and nodded repeatedly. Although he didn't understand why Wu Fu and Lu Bianren didn't need to capture them, he didn't dare to ask. "Although we can't arouse suspicion, we still have to continue the experiment. It just so happens that the dungeon has been destroyed this time. Let's move to another sea area. Anyway, we've captured a lot of people here, and it's not safe to continue. Wang Deyuan, you're the person in charge of the southern continent. I'll leave this matter to you as well. If there's even the slightest mistake, I won't spare you, young Miss Luan ordered. Yes, Wang Deyuan replied in a low voice. His life was at stake. He had already made up his mind. Even if he had to put aside the matter of the molten branch, he had to do these two things well first. Otherwise, he would not even be able to keep his head. What was the point of being greedy? Secular world Chu family villa. Ever since He Luan Duan and the Iron Cloak sex people had come menacingly, but were easily dealt with by Lin Dongfang, the villa had returned to its former tranquility. In fact, it was even more tranquil than before. This was because all kinds of rumors were spreading like wildfire. It was said that this place was treacherous, and there would be strange phenomena appearing from time to time. Many people in the surrounding area had even moved away. It was better to believe such mysterious things than not. In any case, those who could afford a villa were people who didn't lack money, who would be willing to give up a good life and stay in this place in fear. For the group of people left by Lin Yi, it wasn't a bad thing that the surrounding people had moved away. No matter what kind of temperament a cultivator originally had, they would often be more accustomed to peace and quiet. Moreover, the unconscious women were left in the villa. They needed a quieter environment. Originally, after settling the previous incident, Lin Dongfang suggested that everyone move to the West Star Mountain village. However, after discussing for a while, they finally declined. With the protection of the great Lin Dongfang, compared to the Chu family villa, moving to the West Star Mountain village was more worry-free. However, everyone had their own lives after all. They hadn't reached the point where they were completely free. It was obviously unrealistic to let them be so isolated from the world. Moreover, after experiencing this incident, even a fierce person like He Luan Duan was scared out of his wits. How could other people be afraid of him? After all, this was only the secular world. Everyone's strength was already standing at the peak of existence. Each one of them was famous. Only others were afraid of them. No one dared to take the initiative to provoke them. Even if someone could really deal with so many heaven stage great perfection experts. If the great Lin Dongfang behind them was drawn out, who could stop him? The lackeys didn't go themselves, and only sent the unconscious girls over. Letting Lin Dongfang and Aunt Qing take care of so many people at once wasn't very justifiable. The old couple still wanted to have a world of their own, and so they just carried on as usual. The girls were still settled in the villa, and the lackeys were still in groups of two, taking turns to guard the place. Today, it was Chuntian and Lingshan's turn to guard the place. Lingshan was in the room taking care of the girls, while Chuntian, General Weiwu, and the purple lightning beast were working downstairs. The man and the two beasts were extremely nervous, as if they were facing a great enemy. They were playing landlord. When people were bored, they would always do something stupid. Even practitioners were no exception. Fighting the landlord with two spiritual beasts was something that Chuntian had never done before, and it wouldn't be repeated in the future. What was even rarer was that his face was plastered with white paper. Playing landlord with two spiritual beasts. He was a human, and he was the one who lost the most. Chuntian's eyebrows furrowed. He was about to lose again. Just as the atmosphere was getting tense, the doorbell rang. Who is it? Chuntian paused. The two beasts didn't seem to be alerted at all, and he knew that it was just a normal person, no threat. Express delivery. It was the voice of a guy outside. Express delivery? Chuntian was even more surprised. He never bought anything online, and even if someone did, they wouldn't send it here. What express delivery? Plus, the things needed in the villa were all bought by them in shifts from the nearby supermarket. Faubert would often send all sorts of things over, so no one would buy express delivery here. At that thought, Chuntian felt that something was wrong. He gave the two beasts a look and got up to open the door. The two beasts, on the other hand, silently went out from the back door, flanking from both sides. If anything went wrong, one man and two beasts would attack at the same time. Chapter 4400. Carefully opening the door, Chintian looked at the person. He really did look like a normal person, dressed like a delivery boy. If he had to point out a difference, it would be that he was more experienced. Where's the delivery? Chintian frowned. This is the address, Ocean View Bay Villa Area 8th Villa, Lingshan or Wu Chintian. May I ask which one are you? The delivery boy replied faintly. Chintian was even more suspicious now. Who the hell are you? If it was someone else's name written on it, it might really be possible that they bought something and filled in the address to save trouble. But since it was written with his own name, it didn't make sense at all. He didn't buy anything. After last time's experience, Chintian didn't think that anyone would be so incorrigible as to come looking for trouble. But his first reaction was still to be cautious. This guy was a spy sent by some small fry to spy on him. The deliverer man was startled and looked at him, as if he was a lunatic. He muttered, I'm just a deliverer man. Who else could I be? Let me see the package. Chintian observed the man's expression carefully. After making sure that there was nothing wrong, he took the package. After all, he was an expert at the peak of the heaven realm. In the secular world, he was an existence akin to an atomic bomb. Even if the other side had bad intentions, he didn't need to worry. He just needed to instinctively be vigilant. Chintian looked down at the package and froze. The handwriting on the package looked familiar, but he thought about it. Wasn't this Boss Lin Yi's handwriting? That wasn't all. But the big stamp on the package made Chintian's jaw drop. He almost fainted. What was written on it was Heaven Island Central Express Service Company. What the fuck? This was the first time Chintian felt like he was suffocating ever since he became strong. His mind went blank. What kind of delivery company was this? Even the Heavenly Island had appeared. Could it be that Boss Lin Yi had sent the mail from the Heavenly Island? Isn't this a little too mystical? Such an exaggerated thing. The first reaction of a normal person's brain would be, something wasn't right, and Chintian was no exception. He looked at this man suspiciously. Who sent this guy here? This whole setup was pretty good, wasn't it? Are you the recipient or not? Do you want to sign here? If not, I'll return it. The courier man felt goosebumps rising from the bottom of his heart. If it had been someone with a weaker mental fortitude, he would probably have turned around and run away. There was no other way. Nowadays, everyone was afraid of encountering a lunatic. Now that things had come to this, Chintian didn't continue thinking about it. After all, everything else could be a lie, but this was Lin Yi Boss handwriting. It couldn't be fake. And no matter how he looked at it, this delivery man was indeed just an ordinary person. He didn't seem to have any ill intentions. Sign here. Of course I have to sign for it. Chintian quickly said. It didn't matter if this was a trap or not. He had to take a good look at it. In the common world, a near-invincible heavenly grandmaster could ignore a trap or a trap. He didn't really believe it. But what if this really was from Boss Lin Yi? Here, sign here. You can send a reply within 30 days. This is my name card. Call me when you're done, and I'll come to pick it up. The courier man said as he handed the card to Chintian. Chintian's mouth twitched. What kind of world was this? Even delivery men were giving out name cards. Please call me when you're done. I'm leaving. The courier man nodded to Chintian and turned to leave. Wait. Chintian was startled and quickly pulled him back. Is there anything else? The deliverer man's face was obviously guarded, and he even subconsciously got into a defensive posture. It was obvious that he was treating Chintian as a psychopath who might bite at any moment. Ugh. Chintian scratched his head awkwardly. What company is this? How can you deliver from Sky Class Island all the way here? We're Central Express. Haven't you heard of it? The courier man looked at him curiously. Nope, never heard of it. Chintian shook his head. He never bought anything online, and no one would send him stuff for no reason. Naturally, he hadn't heard of it. But just because he hadn't heard of it didn't mean that other people hadn't heard of it. In fact, Central Express was a company that had risen recently. Not only were their distribution channels fast and smooth, but their delivery speed was also much faster than other delivery companies. Their prices were also very low, and so in just a few months, Central Express had quickly taken over the market. There was basically no one who didn't know about Central Express. All right, although our Central Express has only been established for a short period of time, the current market scale is not below any of the top express delivery companies. Our logistics channels are spread all over the world, and there are many express deliveries from overseas, including many small islands, such as Hawaii. Although I have never heard of your heavenly island, I guess it should be a small island, the courier explained. Huh, Hawaii? What does that have to do with Sky Class Island? Chintian froze, thinking about it for a while before reacting. This guy didn't even know what Sky Class Island represented. He thought it was some small island in the ocean. I'm sorry, I've never been to Sky Class Island, but I guess it's something like that, the courier man said awkwardly. Does your company have a lot of these? Does it have anything to do with Sky Class Island? Chintian didn't want to give up. I'm not too sure about that. I'm just a high-level courier here. I'm usually in charge of international mail and some return receipts. Yours is a return receipt, the courier man said. Return receipt? Chintian paused. According to what the courier man said, he could get a reply within a month. He couldn't help but ask, then what kind of return receipt are you talking about? Where do you send it? Is it to the sender's place? Chapter 4401. Since it's sent from Sky Class Island, naturally it's sent back to Sky Class Island. Why else would it be called a receipt? The courier looked at Chintian weirdly. He felt that this person was not only crazy, but retarded as well. No, I mean, how did you send the letter to Sky Class Island? Chintian quickly asked. In fact, he was still wondering if he was dreaming. Sky Class Island had always been a place of legends. And if it wasn't for Lin Yi's boss passing through the portal, he wouldn't have believed that there was such a mysterious place in the world. But now something even more unbelievable had happened. This so-called Central Delivery Company was actually able to send letters back and forth between Sky Class Island and the common world. Even someone as knowledgeable as Chintian had to slap himself in the face to see if he was really still dreaming. But the handwriting was indeed Lin Yi boss handwriting. There was no doubt about that. If this was some kind of elaborate scam, then even Lin Yi boss handwriting could be imitated so flawlessly. And so, Chintian's current state of mind could only be described as half believing and half doubting. More accurately, 40% believing and 60% doubting. I'm sorry, I'm not too sure myself. I'm just a high-level courier, and I'm only in charge of the delivery. I don't ask about anything else. Plus, the logistics channel is a company secret, and normal people wouldn't know about it. I can only tell you that the letters are sent back to the headquarters first, and then transferred. The courier shrugged. Is that so? Thank you then. Seeing that he couldn't get any more information out of the courier, Chintian could only give up and let him go after signing the receipt. But although he said that, he didn't plan on letting it go just like that. No matter how he thought about it, this central courier was too suspicious. Sending letters back and forth between Sky Class Island and the common world. This was something that would topple anyone's worldview. If traveling back and forth between Sky Class Island and the common world was really that easy, then Lin Yi boss wouldn't have had to go through all this trouble with so many top masters. Plus, now that more than a year had passed, if he could really go back and forth freely, even if boss Lin Yi wasn't done with his business, he would still come back to see everyone, right? Chintian's only thought now was to investigate this express delivery company that popped out of nowhere. But while he was a Sky Class perfected, he wasn't a professional, and if he had to do it himself, he'd have to fight his way up to their doorstep. Trying to investigate without leaving any traces would be a fool's errand. However, just because Chintian couldn't investigate this express delivery center, didn't mean that other people couldn't do it. What happened? Speak of the devil. Lingshan came down from the second floor with a glass of water in her hand. She couldn't help but ask when she saw Chintian staring blankly at a package. Sister-in-law Lingshan, you came at the right time. I just received an express delivery. Can you see if you can investigate this express delivery company? Chintian said quickly. Lingshan was from the Supernatural Investigation Department, and investigating a delivery company was a piece of cake. Ah, why do you need to investigate the express delivery company? Lingshan asked, confused. She looked at Chen Tian with a weird expression, almost as weird as the guy from before. What kind of logic was this? Investigating the express delivery company? She drank some water right now. Didn't that mean she had to investigate the water factory? No, this express delivery company is weird, very weird. Chen Tian explained. Weird how? Did they scam you out of money? Lingshan was getting more and more confused. Not really. Chen Tian was a sky class perfected, and no one in the common world would dare scam him out of money. He didn't lack it either. So he waved the package in his hand and smiled bitterly. It's a package that just came. It's from Boss Linny. Pfft. Lingshan spat out the tea in her mouth, almost falling down the stairs. She didn't even have time to care about the splashing tea. She didn't even know how she got there. Chen Tian didn't even finish his sentence before the package was snatched away by Lingshan, and he was splashed with tea at the same time. It really is Lin Yi's handwriting. Lingshan looked at the package, too shocked to say anything. Her eyes started to redden. Tears were welling up in her eyes, but they didn't come out. A whole year had passed. It had been a long time, and there was still no news from Lin Yi. She was worried about Lin Yi's safety every single day, and every single day felt like a year. Admittedly, Lin Yi was already very strong before he left, enough to crush all the top-class practitioners in the common world. But Sky Class Island was different after all. It was a place of legends. How dangerous would it be? Would they be bullied and besieged because they were unfamiliar with the place? Even if the Heavenly Island really existed, it was still a mystery. Sometimes, Lingshan would even wake up in the middle of the night because she couldn't help but worry. It had been so long, and he still hadn't come back. Did something happen to Lin Yi? She didn't think that she would receive a package from Lin Yi today, and from Sky Class Island at that. Lingshan's reaction was the same as Chen Tian's, blanking out and feeling like her brain was lacking oxygen. Lingshan, sis-in-law, do you think we should investigate this central delivery? Chen Tian said urgently. As far as he was concerned, there were only two possible outcomes if he could investigate the identity of this express delivery company. One was that the package was fake, and someone had forged Boss Lin's handwriting. That way, they'd be able to follow the clues and see through the scam. The other possibility was that the package was real, and that Lin Yi's boss had sent it personally from Sky Class Island. The meaning behind this was very tempting. If this central delivery really could travel freely between Sky Class Island and the common world, then wouldn't they be able to go to Sky Class Island and find Boss Lin Yi if they could see through their methods? Chen Tian's thought was logical, and Lingshan naturally thought of it as well. She didn't act impulsively. No matter what, let's gather everyone first. All right. Chen Tian couldn't wait to call everyone, leaving Lingshan staring at Lin Yi's handwriting alone. Chapter 4402. She, of course, wanted to read the letter as soon as possible, but it wasn't appropriate to do so before everyone was gathered. She was Lin Yi's girlfriend, but if this letter was really written by Lin Yi, then it would be for everyone, not just her. As a result, the letter had to be opened in front of everyone. Lingshan was feeling 100 claws scratching at her heart, but she could still hold it in for a little while. After receiving Chen Tian's call, and knowing that Lin Yi had sent a package from Sky Class Island, everyone's first reaction was that this guy was either messing with them or had gone crazy. No one believed him. However, even if he didn't believe it, in less than 2 hours, everyone had already gathered at the Chu clan's villa. Han Xiaopa, Fatty Lai, Kong Xiaobo, Chen Yutian, Cheng Yi Su Shirhan, Zhao Qikuan, Zhao Qijiu Pai Jishan, Pai Jihai, Yu Bing Ing Ziyu and the others. Other than Lin Dongfang and Aunt Qing, who stayed at West Star Village, everyone from Lin Yi's group was present. The reason why they were able to arrive so quickly was not only because of their strong teamwork, but also because of the aftereffects from last time. Everyone was scared by the sudden attack from He Luodan and the others, and it was fortunate that Lin Dongfang came out to save them. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Lin Yi's boss went to Sky Class Island and entrusted these ladies to them. If anything were to happen to them, how would they be able to face Lin Yi? After the previous incident, everyone had learned their lesson. Although they still took turns to guard in pairs, they would not go too far if there was no special need. Once something happened, they would be able to rush to the villa within 2 hours, just like what was happening now. The first thing they did when they arrived at the villa was to drag Wu Qintian out. First, they'd beat the crap out of this guy, but when they saw the package in Ling Shan's hands, especially when they saw Lin Yi's signature on it, they couldn't help but take in a cold breath. Is this real? Everyone couldn't help but look at each other in disbelief, and they had a horrified expression, as if they had seen a ghost. It could be real, it could also be fake. No matter what, this delivery center is definitely suspicious. We need to investigate this thoroughly, Qintian said confidently. Everyone frowned and thought about it. All of them nodded in agreement. That was indeed the case. Regardless of whether it was true or not, there was a need to investigate this express delivery company that had suddenly appeared. If the express delivery was fake, then it meant that there was definitely someone with ulterior motives behind it. They were using this express delivery in Boss Lin Yi's handwriting to make a fuss. If the express delivery was real, then it was even more necessary to investigate the identity of the Central Express Delivery Company. It was actually able to freely travel between Heaven Stage Island and the secular world. If that's the case, I'll have to trouble sister-in-law Lingshan to step in. Everyone turned to Lingshan. The package from Sky Class Island was evidently a supernatural incident, and the Occult Investigation Department had the authority to investigate paranormal happenings. She was the most suitable person to handle this. I'll contact the Supernatural Investigation Bureau right away and let them investigate. Lingshan nodded. She cared about Lin Yi's safety more than anyone else, and this was something she couldn't pass on to anyone else. Then what about this express delivery? Should we open it? The group looked at each other. Almost all of them were Sky Class Full Mastery, and in the secular world, they shouldn't be afraid of anything. However, the arrival of this express delivery was really unimaginable. If it was anyone else, no matter how dense their nerves were, they would still have some doubts in their heart. Of course we have to open it. Lingshan, Changyi, Shirhan and Ziyu said together. They were the bolder ones on this matter, and the reason was simple. They cared about Lin Yi the most. This express delivery might very well be a trap, but what if it wasn't? Even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance, they wouldn't just leave it like this. After all, Lin Yi sending a letter back wasn't something that would happen in real life, but it was something they would fantasize about in their dreams. Plus, their dreams had turned into reality. They couldn't just leave the door open because of a little bit of worry. All right, but before we open it, we need to take precautions first. Yu Tian and the others looked at each other. As men, they couldn't be more cowardly than these girls. Plus, they really wanted to know what was in this express delivery. With their Sky Class Full Mastery, bombs and the like posed no threat to them. Plus, this express delivery was flat, and it didn't look like it could contain a bomb. If there were no surprises, there should be a letter inside. But that didn't mean there was no danger. If this was a trap, then the letter might have some sort of colorless and odorless poison on it. They might be Sky Class Full Mastery, but if it really was some sort of poison, they might not be able to survive it. Just to be safe, Lingshan put on a pair of gloves with excellent insulation, the uniform of the Supernatural Investigation Department. Only then did she slowly open the express delivery, under everyone's gaze. The group held their breaths. As expected, what they saw wasn't something dangerous, but a piece of station. A normal piece of stationery. If they had to point out the difference between it and other stationery, it would be that it was more refined and elegant. This is Lin Yi's handwriting, and the way he speaks is his usual style. There's no mistaking it, it's Lin Yi's handwriting. Lingshan took a quick look and was overjoyed. If this was a trap, imitating Lin Yi's handwriting, that was possible, but even the way he spoke wasn't realistic. This meant that Lin Yi had definitely written this letter. This meant that this express delivery company that popped out of nowhere could really travel between Sky-class island and the common world. This was unbelievable. Really, everyone's eyes lit up when they heard that, their faces filled with joy. They hurriedly urged Lin Yi. What did Boss Lin say up there? How's he doing? Don't rush, I'm not done reading it yet. I'll give it to you guys right away. Ling Shan was afraid that they wouldn't be able to hold themselves back and would snatch it from them. She didn't have time to read it, so she quickly scanned through the letter and passed it to the group, passing it around. The group read it one by one, and those who couldn't wait came over to read it together or pestered Ling Shan to tell them the contents. They couldn't help but sigh as they listened. Chapter 4403. Without a doubt, the letter that everyone was reading was the one that Lin Yi wrote at the Middle Island auction. He didn't lack spirit jade anyway, and he just wanted to give it a try. Even if it didn't reach them, Lin Yi wouldn't feel that it was too much of a pity. However, even he himself wouldn't have thought that this letter would actually reach them. For safety reasons, the contents of the letter didn't touch on any confidential information. Basically, Lin Yi told her everything that had happened since he came to Sky-class Island, from when he first entered the welcoming pavilion to when he went to Central Island, including meeting Tian Chan and Xueli, from the beginning to the end. The reason why Lin Yi didn't mind the details was because he wanted to let everyone know that he was safe and sound on Sky Island. On the other hand, he wanted everyone to have a general impression of Sky Island. After all, one's vision determined one's height. As practitioners, with Lin Yi's help, they would reach the same heights one day. Perhaps in order to increase their strength, they would have to go to Sky Island to train. It wasn't a bad thing to let them be mentally prepared now. Other than that, Lin Yi also mentioned in the letter that he already knew where Zhang Liju was, and he was trying his best to find him. One day, he would be able to go back and save the girls. He told everyone not to worry too much, and not to worry too much. At the end of the letter, Lin Yi naturally asked about everyone's situation. After all, he already knew that this was a letter from the Middle Island auction. In theory, he should be able to receive a reply from everyone. Just like how everyone was worried about him, Lin Yi, who was on Sky Island, was also worried about his women and followers in the common world. The Chu Villa, which was usually peaceful, was bustling for an entire afternoon. Everyone read Lin Yi's letter once, and it wasn't enough. Ling Shan and the others even fought to read it a second time, because it was his first time reading. It was very rough, and it was so rare to receive a letter from Lin Yi, so he had to read every word and sentence carefully. At the same time, those who couldn't get the chance to read it a second time were all excited, and they discussed the situation that Lin Yi mentioned in the letter. When it came to the exciting part, everyone was so excited that they couldn't wait to recreate the scene. Only then would they be able to enjoy themselves. After reading the letter, everyone's yearning for the Heaven Step Island had become even more intense. They were all looking forward to when Boss Lin Yi would return and bring them to the legendary Heaven Step Island. Everyone stayed together until night time and did not disperse. They were still enthusiastically discussing what they had seen and heard in Lin Yi's letter. Since they knew that Boss Lin Yi was fine, they didn't have to worry about him. Their original worries could now be completely put down. They also became more motivated and looked forward to the future. And in this process, Ling Shan's phone rang all of a sudden, and everyone shut their mouths as they stared at Ling Shan, waiting for her to finish the call. Everyone, the Occult Investigation Bureau's investigation on the delivery center is out. Ling Shan said to the group. How is it? How is it? Chuntian and the others asked impatiently. Since Boss Lin Yi's letter was real, it meant that the courier center really had eyes and ears everywhere. This meant that the Central Express Delivery Center was really omnipotent and could freely travel between the heavenly island and the secular world. Of course, everyone wanted to know the details of such a magical express delivery company. I've already told them to send the information to my phone. Let's take a look. Ling Shan took out a projector and projected the information on the wall, making everyone gather in a circle to study it. After all, the Supernatural Investigation Bureau had an official background, and it was not an ordinary department. It had a lot of authority. The information that everyone saw was the result of collecting all kinds of information through many channels, including all kinds of public and private, and even some that could not be seen in the light. They didn't find anything suspicious after reading through the information. This was completely different from what they had expected. As a mysterious courier company that could connect to Heaven Step Island, there was no doubt that the courier center was carrying secrets that couldn't be told to anyone. However, after reading so much detailed information, everyone realized that although the logistics network of this express delivery company was indeed accessible and much more powerful than ordinary express delivery companies, other than that, there didn't seem to be anything magical about it. This courier center that popped out of nowhere really has a lot of secrets. The group looked at each other. Even the investigation department couldn't find out anything about it. This was no small matter. But the more it was like this, the more it proved that it wasn't normal. Think about it. If it was just a normal courier company, how could they escape the eyes and ears of the investigation department? How could they send a courier from Heaven Step Island? Wait a minute. This courier center is a foreign company, and its headquarters is in Europe? Shintian pointed at one of the documents, surprised. Express delivery companies were different from other industries. Only after they had taken root in the local area could they expand into the market and gain recognition. Therefore, many of them were local logistics companies. Everyone thought that the sudden rise of the Central Express Delivery Company should be no exception. But they did not expect it to be a completely foreign company, and its headquarters was in Europe. Oh right, the group reacted and raised a new question. Who's the founder and boss? The information doesn't say. I'll get someone to look into it right now. Lingshan realized this as well, and called the investigation department. The group had a feeling that if they could find out who this courier center's boss was, they might be able to find out who it was. After a while the results came out. Firewolf Group. The 4 simple words made everyone look at each other, and it took a while for them to speak. There's something fishy about this. Looks like we'll have to contact Dafeng Bro about this. Lingshan said, rubbing her chin. The group nodded as well. Red Conches and Firewolves were one. So Dafeng Bro could be considered as someone who had infiltrated Firewolf Group. Only he would be able to get to the bottom of this. Chapter 4404. None of the people present could hold themselves back after seeing Dafeng Bro's unexpected appearance. They were all laughing, so hard they couldn't stand up straight. In the end, it was Lingshan who came out and explained everything to Dafeng Bro, passing around Lin Yi's handwritten letter. Dafeng Bro was no less shocked than the others when he read the contents of Lin Yi's letter. He was alone in the Red Conch, and it had been a long time since he received any news from Lin Yi. This feeling of not knowing when the end would come was much more difficult to bear than the others. Fortunately, Lin Yi had left him the antidote before he left, so he didn't have to worry about his life. He was grateful to Lin Yi even now. How is it? Do you know anything about this central delivery? Lingshan and the others asked impatiently. I'm not sure. I'm only in charge of a part of Red Conch's business, and it's hard for me to get involved in other matters. This central delivery seems to have been established not too long ago, and I don't have much to do with it. But I can go back and try to investigate, Dafeng Bro said. Is that so? Everyone couldn't help feeling disappointed. If they could figure out the ins and outs of the Central Express Delivery Company, they might be able to figure out how to freely travel between Heaven Stage Island and the secular world. This matter was extremely important, but it seemed that it wouldn't be so easy to figure it out. Don't be too dejected. I have some power there, and I can't guarantee that I'll be able to get the core information, but we can at least try. No matter what, we'll be able to get some inside information, Dafeng Bro said to the others. Okay, we'll leave it to you then. The others nodded. In order to avoid suspicion, Dafeng Bro didn't stay in the villa for too long. He left under the cover of the night. Dafeng Bro was very efficient. And the others didn't have to wait long. Before they could leave the villa, Doffing Bro sent a message the next morning. The express from Heaven Island is said to come from a small island in the sea near Las Vegas. That sea is the base of the Fire Wolf group, and the core island is called Fire Wolf New Island. The express was sent from there, but it was sent from there before. I don't know. Looking at the message sent by Big Brother phone, everyone could not help but fall silent. In fact, according to this inference, it was easy to infer that the express delivery should have arrived at Heaven Island before arriving at the new Fire Wolf Island. Although this speculation was shocking, it seemed to be the most reasonable one. In other words, in this new Fire Wolf Island, there was a large number of people. There was a high possibility that there was a special passage connected to Heavenly Island. However, even if they were quite confident in this conjecture, there was nothing they could do to determine whether it was true or not. Only by seeing it with their own eyes would they know. However, the new Fire Wolf Island was the base of the Fire Wolf gang. They couldn't just barge in with force, right? The strength of Heaven Realm Great Circle was enough to move unhindered in the secular world. However, they were not arrogant and conceited people. They had never felt that they were invincible in the world. Moreover, the previous incident had already given them a wake-up call. If Lin Dongfang had not appeared at the last moment to save the day, it would be hard to say how many people would have survived. Plus, Sky-class full mastery was only a threat in the common world. It was just like what Lin Yi said in the letter. Sky-class full mastery was only a threat in the common world. On the mysterious Sky-class island, it was just like what Lin Yi said. Since the new Fire Wolf Island could be connected to Heaven Island, who knew what kind of masters were hiding there? If there was a master from Heaven Island, even if there was only one, it was not something the people here could handle. Chen Tian and the others may be hot-blooded people, but they weren't brainless. They wouldn't do something as stupid as charging in without knowing the enemy's background. Lingshan, sister-in-law, since we have a clear target, it seems that we can only trouble the secret investigation department again. If we don't know the truth, we can't act rashly. The others looked at each other and said cautiously. Before Lin Yi left, he gave them the most important task, which was to protect the girls who were unconscious. Other than that, everything else was secondary. If they acted rashly to investigate the new island, or even caused trouble because of it, it would be putting the cart before the horse, and the loss would not be worth it. Yeah, that's the only thing we can do for now, but don't get your hopes up. If it were within Huaxia, the occult investigation department would be able to investigate a little, but this island is a small island outside of Huaxia, and it's very secretive. Even the occult investigation department wouldn't be able to extend their reach that far. We'd be thankful if we could get some outside information, Lingshan said. Right now it's better to know as much as we can. Knowing some clues is better than not knowing anything. Although it's not the time for us to go against them completely, it's best to plan ahead. Only then can we be prepared. Be careful, don't let them find out. Yubing said in a low voice. Yes, Boss Lin Yi didn't tell us to deal with this courier, or the new island behind it. Even if we want to investigate them, we need to be careful and not force our way in. We don't want unnecessary trouble. The others nodded in agreement. In any case, protecting the unconscious women was the most important thing. Otherwise, if they were not careful and provoked a strong enemy that they couldn't deal with, then it would be really difficult. They couldn't really hide in the West Star Mountain village and let Lin Dongfang, the great god, come out again, right? They were Boss Lin Yi's people, but they were still masters in their own right. They didn't have that thick of a skin to ask the old man for help whenever they needed it. Don't worry, everyone. I'll personally go back to the secret investigation department to keep an eye on the island. Safety first, I promise we won't alert them. Lingshan nodded. Oh, right, I almost forgot something important. The courier guy said that the letter Lin Yi boss sent us was a receipt. This means that we can reply to Lin Yi boss and have this courier deliver it to boss Lin Yi. Chen Tian slapped his forehead. We can reply. Why didn't you say so earlier? The group was surprised and happy, but their faces turned unfriendly. They grabbed Chen Tian and started beating him up. Luckily, they hadn't left yet. Otherwise, they'd missed this important chance to send a message to boss Lin Yi. Chapter 4405. This time, even Ling Shan, Cheng Yi, Su Shirhan, and Ziyu didn't let him go. They didn't care about their image as girls at all, rushing up and punching Qintian. It was a scene that made people's hair stand on end. If Lin Yi was here, he'd have to think twice about messing with these girls in the future. In less than 3 minutes, Qintian was beaten beyond recognition. In the chaos, his clothes were torn to shreds, and his hair was a mess. He looked pitiful, as if he'd just been abused. The crowd was laughing so hard that they almost collapsed on their stomachs. "Brothers and sisters, please go easy on me, or I'll call the police," Qintian said with a wronged face. Fortunately, he was a physical practitioner, so he couldn't be beaten to death. Of course, the crowd wouldn't really kill him, but this image was too embarrassing. If someone took a picture of him and posted it, how would he face people in the future? "You deserve it. It's your fault for delaying the military, delaying such an important message until now. You're not reliable at all." Everyone cursed, not a single one of them sympathizing with him. It had been almost an entire day since they'd received the package. A normal person would have said it right away, but Qintian waited until now. Who else would they beat up if not him? "It's just a bit late. It's not like I really forgot about it. What are you guys so nervous about?" Qintian scratched his head, speechless. He'd been focused on this package ever since he'd received it, thinking about what was going on behind the scenes. In fact, if it weren't for that flash of inspiration, he might have forgotten about it just like that. A whole 20 hours, and you call that a bit late? Everyone scoffed and ignored him. They gathered in a circle, unable to conceal their excitement as they discussed. Come. Let's talk about it. What should we write back to Boss Lin?" "It's simple. Everyone write one and send it out together?" Fatty Lai suggested. Yes, everyone write one. Write as many as you want." "I've decided. I'll write 50,000 words first," Ziyu said with pride. 50,000? Sister Ziyu, do you think you're writing a novel? That's right. 50,000 words is too much. 50,000 words written on paper is too thick. They might not even be willing to deliver it. I think 30,000 words should be enough." Shirhan said seriously. Everyone fainted. His 30,000 words were a thick stack. How much better was it compared to Ziyu's 50,000? Moreover, there were so many people present. If each of them wrote 30,000 words, it would add up to hundreds of thousands of words. How thick would the paper be? The courier service would probably go crazy, right? 30,000 words is too much. Everyone should be more realistic. Otherwise, even if Lin Yi received it, he'd have to go into isolation for a couple of days just to read it. Ling Shan couldn't help but laugh. That's a lot of words. Ling Shan couldn't help but laugh. Exactly. Sister-in-law Ling Shan is right. Everyone nodded in agreement and asked, "What do you think the upper limit should be?" About that, Ling Shan thought about it seriously for a long time before saying slowly, "How about 20,000? Holy shit. Everyone collapsed, not sure if they should be laughing or crying. At the end of the day, it turns out that even you have 10,000 characters at the beginning? I can't help it, it's been a year. There's too many things I want to say." Ling Shan stuck her tongue out, embarrassed. It had been a whole year, and the things that had happened during that time were too many to talk about. Plus, women were emotional creatures, and no matter what happened, they'd always want to share it with the man they loved. Ling Shan was no exception. Because of the length of the letter, everyone gathered together and discussed enthusiastically for an entire hour. Finally, they reluctantly reached a consensus. One by one, they got a pen and paper, found a place to sit, and began to write. The atmosphere was very tense, as if a big exam was approaching. As for what they were going to write, they'd have to wait for Lin Yi to receive it on Sky Class Island. Of course, there was also the possibility that he wouldn't receive it. For example, the letter they were going to write might be too heavy and thick, and the courier service wouldn't send it. Sky Class Island, Nanzhou Lunghai. Devil Lung City, which was already bustling with noise, was especially crowded today. The highly anticipated escort agency event of the South Continent had officially begun today. It was a festival in name, and it didn't sound like it had anything to do with most people. However, the truth was that in the chaotic Nanzhou seas, the escort agencies were far more than just a normal logistics organization. Due to the lack of a unified and powerful official force, many escort agencies played the role of maintaining order in the many seas of Antarctica, to a large extent in addition to escorting escorts. Their existence was an indispensable deterrent to all sorts of small fries, including pirates. This was the truth. Although the South Continent's seas were all chaotic places, there was still a huge difference in the degree of chaos between them. Usually, the sea regions with powerful escort agencies were relatively stable, while the sea regions with weak escort agencies, or even no escort agencies, were extremely chaotic. For example, the Lunghai Seas had the Four Seas Escort Agency, and so the order there had always been the best out of all the seas in Nanzhou. Another example was the Wayark Sea. Although the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, which was ranked 5th, was not as orderly as the Lunghai Seas. At least it wasn't out of control. However, there weren't any decent and powerful escort agencies in the Jinduan Sea. Hence, its degree of chaos was far beyond that of the Dark Magic Sea region and the Verdant Arc Sea region. It had always been a gathering place for many pirates. Even if pirates brazenly discussed robberies, no one dared to be a busybody. This was because 7 out of 10 people in the vicinity were pirates, while the remaining 3 were brokers who specialized in selling stolen goods to pirates. Hence, without the existence of these escort agencies, the situation in the many seas would be far more chaotic and cruel than it was now. It was very likely that it would be in a mess, and even a slightly more prosperous city, like the Lunghai Sea, would be nowhere to be seen. Hence, the Nanzhou Escort Agency Festival, which was held once every 5 years, gathered all the most powerful escort agencies in the Nanzhou Seas. It wasn't a simple gathering of the industry, but a core festival that everyone in the Nanzhou Seas paid close attention to. Chapter 4406. Not only would its outcome determine the ranking of the major escort agencies, but it would also affect the future power structure of the Southern Continent's sea region. In the coming year, which sea region was safer, and which sea region was more dangerous would depend on the direction of this grand event. At this moment, people from all walks of life had already gathered in the vast Magic Cold Plaza. At a glance, it looked majestic, and there were all kinds of factions present. Many of them were invited to attend the ceremony, and many of them had come to watch the excitement. However, the most conspicuous group of people present were the escorts from the escort agencies. As Lenny looked at the dazzling array of escort agency flags and listened to Qi Wenhan's explanation, he couldn't help but be secretly surprised. Although the Southern Continent's escort agency grand event was hosted by the 5 major escort agencies, there were actually 32 agencies participating. In other words, almost all the escort agencies in the Southern Continent's sea region were present. The Southern Continent's escort agency grand event truly lived up to its name. There was only one final objective of this grand meeting, and that was to decide on the 5 strongest escort agencies. There were 32 escort agencies present here, yet they had to compete for a mere 5 spots. The difficulty of this was obvious. Previously, Lenny had only been thinking about Wu Baoliang and hadn't paid much attention to the Southern Continent's escort agency grand event. However, it seemed that it wouldn't be easy for the Heavens Equal Escort Agency to maintain its position in the top 5. In the middle of the plaza, a temporary stage had been set up. It wasn't big, and there were only 5 seats on it. However, the people in each seat sat upright. Although they didn't make a sound, the aura of these 5 people was enough to suppress the entire crowd. The demeanor of experts was unmistakable. Among them, Qi Wenhan's father, Qi Mingyuan, was impressively present. Needless to say, this was the judging panel formed by the 5 major escort agencies. Thank you everyone for your support. I am the Four Seas Escort Agency's head escort, Boundless Sea, representing the 5 major escort agencies. I pay my respects to all the heroes and warriors present here. The burly man sitting in the middle of the 5 suddenly stood up and cupped his hands. His voice was like a great bell and rumbled like thunder. It actually drowned out the clamor of the crowd, and the plaza quieted down. Everyone's gazes were involuntarily focused on the chief escort of the 4 Seas Escort Agency. Meanwhile, the escorts from the 32 escort agencies began to rub their palms together in eagerness as they waited for the official duel to begin. This was the best stage for them to show off. The South Continent's Escort Agency Grand Gathering was not only for the competition between the 5 major escort agencies, but also the highest stage for the competition between the escorts. To them, the importance of this grand gathering was akin to the ancient imperial examinations for scholars. It was directly related to their future. If he could perform outstandingly in this conference, even if he was unknown before, his value would definitely skyrocket. It was even possible for him to become the center of attention and enter the upper echelons of the escort agency. On behalf of the 5 major escort agencies, I announce the 37th South Continent Escort Agency Grand Assembly. Begin. Boundless Sea was clearly someone who disdained wasting words. He didn't bother with any pleasantries. He got straight to the point without saying anything. Let's get to the point. The crowd erupted into thunderous cheers. They admired Boundless Sea's direct and efficient style. To put it bluntly, Boundless Sea's style was very straightforward. Aside from the escorts from the 32 escort agencies, the rest of the crowd had gathered here purely to watch the escorts from the major escort agencies fight to the death. They wanted to see the intense scene where blood was shed with every strike, not the nonsense of those so-called big shots. If Boundless Sea had come up to give his report for an hour, then the majority of the crowd would probably have left. Even the escorts from the escort agencies would have started to doze off. The South Continent Escort Agency Grand Assembly has been held for so many years. The purpose of holding it is very clear. I believe everyone here knows this as well. It's to take advantage of this rare opportunity to conduct an examination together and improve the escorting skills of the escort agencies. Boundless Sea paused, then turned to the group of escorts and said in a low voice, "Escorting escorts is your main job. It's also the foundation for your survival. If you can't even do this well, what face do you have to be an escort agency? What right do you have to establish yourselves in the South Continent seas?" So in this grand assembly, all the competitions will revolve around escorting escorts. I believe no one has any objections to this, right? The escorts from the 32 escort agencies below the stage nodded in agreement. This was a grand event for South Continent's escort agencies. As escorts, they naturally had to compete in escorting goods. Otherwise, they couldn't possibly be asked to compete in image, temperament, or embroidery, right? It wasn't like they were competing for Invincible East. Very good. Next, head escort Zhao Bufan of the Divine Wind Escort Agency will announce the rules for the first round of the competition. Boundless Sea nodded slightly to the middle-aged man sitting to his right, and then sat back down. Everyone, the judges have decided that the content of the first round of the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Assembly will be a simulation of escorting escorts that is closely related to everyone's daily life. Escort robbery. Zhao Bufan continued Boundless Sea's words. Everyone's spirits rose when they heard this. Escort robbery. Just from the name alone, they could guess that even though it was the first round of the competition, it definitely wouldn't be easy. However, they were already mentally prepared. After all, in the past South Continent Escort Agency Grand Assembly, the competition was extremely bloody and cruel. There had never been a lack of deaths. This was also the usual style of the South Continent Sea. Otherwise, if such a highly anticipated escort agency grand assembly turned out to be a small scuffle without bloodshed, such a greenhouse competition that couldn't withstand the test. So what if they ended up as the top 5 escort agencies? Could they scare those vicious pirates? In the Southern Continent Sea, there were only 2 things that could truly obtain the right to speak. One was strength, and the other was fresh blood. Without either one of them, It would be impossible to suppress those lawless pirates, and they would only be reduced to a complete joke. The rules are very simple. Every escort agency will come out according to the order in which they drew lots. They will send out 4 Golden Core escorts to escort the escorts. The agency that drew the corresponding lot will also send out 4 Golden Core escorts to escort the escorts, Zhao Bufan announced. To put it plainly, it was a 4v4 team battle. However, what made Lenny curious was, why was it limited to Golden Core experts? This rule is actually very normal. Even the most powerful 4C's escort agency has most of its escorts at the Golden Core stage. It's not that they can't afford to invite nascent soul experts. It's just that if they have to trouble nascent soul experts to escort normal escorts, there won't be much profit for the agency. There's also no need for it, Qi Wenhan explained. Chapter 4407. I see. Lenny nodded his head in enlightenment. Although Heaven's Equal Security had a nascent soul expert like Housekeeper Song, he was only there to scare people and wouldn't personally go out to deliver the goods. Since it was a simulation, it naturally had to be restored to the most realistic situation. Usually, it was the Golden Core Stage escort masters who were sent out. Naturally, it was the Golden Core Stage escort masters who were sent out this time. Otherwise, it would be meaningless if all the major escort agencies sent out their strongest experts. If they sent nascent soul experts, even if they won, they wouldn't be able to display the true skills of the agencies. The 5 agencies that won in the end wouldn't be able to convince the public. The time limit is 1 incense stick's worth of time. If the escort party can successfully defend the escorted goods within the time limit, and all 4 escorts survive and annihilate their opponents, they will get 80 points. For every person the escort party loses, 10 points will be deducted. For every person the escort party survives, 10 points will also be deducted. On the other hand, if the guard doesn't manage to defend the item, they will get 0 points. On the other hand, the robber will get 80 points. With the same logic, for every person they lose, 10 points will be deducted. For every person the enemy survives, 10 points will be deducted. In this round, the 32 agencies will each get 1 chance to defend and 1 chance to rob. When added together, it will be the total points. Do you all understand the rules? Zhao Bufan said to everyone. Yes, sir. The group of escorts replied in unison with great tacit understanding. This rule sounds a little cruel. Lin Yi, on the other hand, couldn't help but be speechless. The rules of the first round of the tournament weren't so much a competition. It was more like killing each other. Moreover, they were using headcount points, forcing you to kill each other. To sum it up, whether it was the side guarding or the side robbing, there was only one general principle for the armed escorts who were about to participate in the competition. While ensuring that they survived, they had to try their best to kill their opponents. Only then would they be able to get high points. Lin Yi had participated in all sorts of tests and competitions ever since he came to Sky Class Island, and while competition was encouraged as well, he'd never been in a competition like this, where he was forced to kill his opponent with a head count. All of this could only be attributed to the environment. Compared with the killing competition at present, the trial competitions of the 3 pavilions in the North Island were simply like playing house in a greenhouse. They were too comfortable and unchallenging. No one knew if it was an illusion or if it was real, but from this moment on, the guards of the 32 escort agencies suddenly had an additional layer of chilling killing intent on their bodies. The atmosphere suddenly became unusually solemn, as if they were soldiers who were about to go into battle. Layers of dark clouds floated across the sky, pressing down on everyone's heads. Brother Qi, what are your plans? Lin Yi looked at Qi Wenhan, then turned his head to look at the surrounding escort agencies. Since the rules of the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event were different every year, they had only just learned of the rules. The leaders of the various escort agencies were busy arranging their troops and formations at this moment. This was the first round of the competition. Whether they could win the first battle would directly determine the momentum of the escort agency and indirectly affect the direction of the competition. Therefore, it was of utmost importance and could not be lost. Hearing Lin Yi's question, the guards of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency all looked at Qi Wenhan. Chief Escort Qi Mingyuan was the judge on the stage, so the arrangement of the troops fell on the young master, Qi Wenhan. Everyone's future was naturally in Qi Wenhan's hands. That's a good question, Brother Ling. Although the format of the competition is different in every South Continent Escort Agency festival, the escort agencies that achieve good results in the end all use the same strategy, without exception. Qi Wenhan smiled mysteriously. Oh, Lin Yi could not help but be interested. The strategy is actually very simple. With a great reward, there will be brave men. Qi Wenhan glanced at the surrounding guards, then lowered his voice and revealed to Lin Yi. Old Master has already told me before that this competition will not be stingy with the reward, so I have been preparing for it for a long time. Otherwise, how could it have taken so long to scrape together the 300,000 spiritual jades that we paid to the Hong Consortium last time? Lin Yi suddenly understood. So it turned out that he had really been prepared for this long ago. Everyone listen up. In this round of competition, regardless of whether you participate in guarding or robbing, regardless of the outcome, anyone from our agency who participates in the competition will receive a reward of 50,000 spiritual jades. Qi Wenhan announced to the crowd. As soon as he finished speaking, the guards of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency all gasped. Even Lin Yi was a little shocked. 50,000 spiritual jades was not a small sum. Many escorts would not be able to save up such a sum even after working hard for more than 10 years. The chief father and son were sparing no expense. But thinking about it carefully, in such a cruel competition, every participant was fighting with their lives on the line. Once they stepped into the competition, it meant that they would most likely die. This was not a joke. If there were no benefits, who would be willing to risk their lives for no reason? Only with great rewards would there be death warriors. Not only the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, but the other escort agencies also gave generous rewards to the participants. In order to obtain a good ranking in this year's South Continent Escort Agency Grand Meet, this was the most basic of sacrifices. Of course, for the various escort agencies, this kind of sacrifice was not completely without a reward. On the contrary, if they could win in the competition, or even make a name for themselves, the rewards were far more generous than what the average person could imagine. This was not because of the competition's rewards, but because the large chambers of commerce that had been specially invited to watch the competition had all made verbal promises in advance. Many of their large orders would be signed on the spot with the winning agency. At that time, the benefits involved would not be as simple as a mere few tens of thousands of spiritual jades. It would absolutely be an astronomical figure that was sufficient to affect the rise and fall of any escort agency. And even the 5 great escort agencies were no exception. Not only were these orders shocking profits, but they also directly determined the market share. It could be said to be extremely important. Therefore, the father and son, Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan, were sparing no expense in order to preserve their influence. 50,000 spiritual jades. In the face of such a generous reward, the escorts of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency began to breathe heavily. Although every other escort agency had also offered generous rewards, there were only a few that had reached the amount of 50,000 spiritual jades. After all, compared to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, which was one of the 5 major escort agencies, the other escort agencies were still lacking in capital. 50,000 spiritual jades per person, including the 4 guards and 4 robbers in the first round of the competition, would add up to a total of 400,000 spiritual jades. This was equivalent to the annual profit of those escort agencies. How many of them could afford it? Chapter 4408. Young Master, count me in. Someone rushed to sign up. Me too. Me too. The others did not want to be left behind and eagerly signed up, afraid that the 8 spots would be snatched up by others. Seeing this, Lin Yi could not help but smile. Money makes the world go round. This saying was true. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that this kind of competition was a death sentence. It was purely a high-risk job where one's life was on the line. However, in the face of the temptation of 50,000 spiritual jades, no one was afraid even if they became ghosts. Good. The escorts of my heaven's equal escort agency are indeed courageous and insightful. I was right about you. How about this? Those who are willing to fight, come to me and sign up first. I will then choose from among you. Chi Wenhan said happily. The power of the spiritual jade was truly limitless. In just a short period of time, the number of escorts from the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had already reached more than 10, far exceeding the 8 spots required for the competition. This gave Chi Wenhan more or less leeway to arrange his troops. The first battle directly affected the morale of the entire competition. Whether or not they could get off to a good start was of utmost importance. If possible, each escort agency would send out as many strong people as possible. Even if they were not their trump cards, they would at least be the best in the agency. However, there was an important prerequisite. These people had to volunteer for the competition. After all, unlike a sect that had absolute control over its disciples, the relationship between an escort agency and its escorts was purely one of profit and employment. It was just like how it was in a normal escort business. Whether or not the escorts were willing to take on the job depended entirely on the escorts themselves. The agency could not force them, nor would it force them. A melon that was forcefully picked would not be sweet, not to mention whether or not the escorts would accept the agency's offer. Even if they were forced to participate, they would only do the work without putting in the effort. In the end, the agency would still be the one suffering the loss. Therefore, if any escort agency wanted to achieve the best results in arranging their troops, they could only do what the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency did. They could only use benefits to entice the escorts to volunteer for the competition, like the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Only the best among them would have the strength and motivation to truly fight for the agency. As the young master of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, Chi Wenhan was usually the one in charge. Naturally, he knew the strength of these escorts like the back of his hand. His gaze swept over the faces of each of the registered escorts, and he had already made his decision. After all, he had been holed up in the inn for the past few days, making all sorts of preparations. These efforts were not in vain. Brother Ling, what do you think? Chi Wenhan turned his head to ask Lin Yi. Although he already had a conclusion in his heart, he still had to consider Lin Yi's opinion. After all, Lin Yi was his most important trump card. Brother Chi, you are the commander-in-chief. How you arrange the troops is up to you. Whoever you say should be the one to go. Why are you asking me? Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. With his strength, in the gold core stage, he was an invincible existence. For others, the first round of the competition was a narrow escape. But for him, there was no pressure at all. It was up to him whether to go or not. It all depended on whether or not Chi Wenhan had made such arrangements. If there weren't enough people, Lin Yi wouldn't have any objections, even if he went up to make up the numbers. Haha, 2 heads are better than 1. Brother Ling, you can also help me out. How about it? Brother Ling, are you interested in going up to play? Chi Wenhan laughed heartily. For Lin Yi, this kind of competition was really just for fun. It depends on how Brother Chi arranges it. If I'm needed, then I'll go up. Lin Yi smiled faintly, then paused and said, But I'm more concerned about the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. Will Wu Bao Liang go up in the first round of the competition? If he goes up, Brother Chi, you have to leave a spot for me. Wu Bao Liang was the secret military advisor of the Poison Eye mercenary group. His status was almost equal to Chung Haonan's. Now that the Poison Eye mercenary group was an important external aid for the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, Wu Bao Liang was to the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, just like Lin Yi was to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. He was definitely a powerful trump card. In order to compete for the position of the top 5 escort agencies, if the Dragon Boat Escort Agency was determined to gain the upper hand in the first round of the competition, it was very likely that they would send out Wu Bao Liang. Lin Yi's original intention for this South Continent Escort Agency Grand Meeting was to fight against Wu Baoliang. Even if he might not be able to draw the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, he would not let go of this chance. Otherwise, if he could not get rid of Wu Baoliang in this meeting, it would not be so easy to deal with this guy in the future. Yes, before the drawing begins, each escort agency has to submit the list of participating escorts to the judging panel. I'll go tell the old man and ask him to pay attention. If there is one, I'll report Brother Ling's name. If there isn't, then forget it. Qi Wenhan nodded and said, although he was also determined to win the first round of the competition, he did not intend to let Lin Yi participate in the first round. After all, he had positioned Lin Yi as a powerful trump card to turn the tables on Gan Hun at a critical moment. If he used him in the first round, not only would it be overkill, but it would also expose his own trump card and put him in a passive position in the following rounds. Moreover, the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was one of the top 5 escort agencies. Even if they were ranked last, they still had enough confidence. As long as they were not too unlucky in drawing the lots, with the first-class experts in the agency, they should be able to get off to a good start. Therefore, there was no need for Lin Yi to participate in the first round of the competition. Of course, if it was because of Wu Baoliang that Lin Yi decided to participate, then it would be a different story. Qi Wenhan immediately took a pen and paper and wrote down 2 lists of 8 people. One of them had Lin Yi in it, and the other did not have Lin Yi. This was to be used as a contingency plan. Then he walked up to the stage in the middle in high spirits. At this time, because the drawing of lots was about to begin, most of the 32 agencies had already prepared a list of 8 people and submitted it to the judging panel. However, Qi Wenhan did not submit it immediately. Instead, he ran up to his father, Qi Mingyuan, and whispered a few words in his ear. Then he walked down with the list and waited to the side. Not only Qi Wenhan, but the other agencies also had people waiting to the side. They all had one thing in common. They were all from the top 5 escort agencies. First, look at the list of participants from the other agencies. Once they knew their opponents, they would then make a targeted arrangement. This had always been the privilege of the top 5 escort agencies. This was something that the other agencies could not help but be envious of. Because there was no one on the judging panel, it was useless even if they deliberately delayed. They could not see the list of participants from the other agencies. So naturally, they could not target them. They could only rely on their own strength. Fortunately, the list of participants was submitted before the drawing of lots. Up until now, no one knew each other's opponents, so it was relatively fair. Chapter 4409. There wouldn't be a situation where an escort agency would be purposely targeted. The 5 escort agencies would at most make some minor adjustments to their strategy and wouldn't specifically target one agency. Thus, everyone turned a blind eye to it and acted as though it was nothing out of the ordinary. As one of the 5 escort agencies, they had some privileges. In the South Continent Sea, where the strong preyed on the weak, it was already rare to be able to achieve such a level of fairness. No one was stupid enough to ask for so-called true fairness. After waiting for a while, Qi Mingyuan finally saw the name list of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. He shook his head at Qi Wenhan, indicating that he didn't see Wu Baoliang. Only then did Qi Wenhan hand in the 8 name list that he had prepared in advance. Soon after, the representatives of the other 5 major escort agencies submitted their name lists. Compared to the newly promoted Heavens Equal Escort Agency, they were clearly more experienced in the way they did things. Qi Wenhan was waiting for the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's name list, while they were waiting for the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's name list. The biggest competitor of the 5 escort agencies had always been each other. The threat that the other agencies posed to them was far from their own. After the 32 escort agencies submitted their name lists, Zhao Bufan represented the judging team and gathered all the people in charge of the escort agencies together. Under everyone's supervision, they started to draw lots in front of everyone. Since ancient times, In any form of competition, the drawing of lots had always been the segment where dirty tricks were most likely to occur. It was also the segment where it was most likely to be manipulated under the table. Therefore, everyone paid particular attention to it, and paid particular attention to it. As a result, not only were the judges from the 5 escort agencies watching the entire drawing process, but there were also the other powers that were invited to watch. Under the supervision of so many experts, if there was anyone who could play dirty tricks, that person would have to be as heaven-defying as Lin Yi. Very quickly, under everyone's gaze, the results of the drawing were announced. Not mentioning the other escort agencies, at least the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's draw wasn't too bad. After 2 draws, the opponent for the escort battle was the Horse Escort Agency, while the opponent for the escort robbery battle was Yongxing Escort Agency. What was worth rejoicing was that both the Horse Escort Agency and Yongxing Escort Agency weren't part of the 5 escort agencies. They were not part of the top 5 escort agencies. Not now, not in the past. Therefore, in terms of overall strength, it was obvious that the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency was stronger. However, Qi Wenhan wasn't the least bit happy about the result of the draw. Although the strength of these 2 escort agencies couldn't compare to the 5 major escort agencies, they were definitely not weak. In the last South Continent Escort Agency Festival, these 2 companies ranked 11th and 13th respectively. Moreover, the strength of these 2 escort agencies was very stable. Not only in the previous Grand Assembly, but also in the previous Grand Assemblies. In other words, among all the 32 escort agencies, although the Noon Horse Escort Agency and Yongxing Escort Agency weren't the best, they were still the best. But it was completely worthy of the above-average evaluation. More importantly, they were different from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. In order to deal with the upcoming main event, Qi Wenhan still had to consider conserving his strength in case he ran out of stamina. However, neither the Noon Horse Escort Agency nor the Yongxing Escort Agency had such thoughts. Their typical strategy was to fight to the death with all their might in every match, and would never deliberately conserve their strength. To them, the throne of the top 5 escort agencies was an unattainable dream. Their most realistic goal was to maintain their ranking. It was already a great success to be able to squeeze into the top 10 this time. Their previous rankings were obtained by fighting to the death with others. This time, they naturally had to fight to the death. Therefore, these 2 agencies were definitely very hard to deal with. It was no wonder that Qi Wenhan was frowning. This was the first time he had led a team to participate in the South Continent Escort Agency Festival. If they got off to a bad start and failed miserably at the beginning, they would really be too ashamed to face others. Don't be nervous. We are the stronger side. There will be no problem, as long as we perform as we normally do. They should be the ones who should be nervous. Lin Yi patted Qi Wenhan's shoulder and comforted him. Brother Ling is right. I was blinded by the situation. Qi Wenhan instantly broke out in a cold sweat. He turned his head to look at the group of escorts who were all focused on him, and nodded gratefully at Lin Yi. The general was the soldier's courage. The war had yet to officially begin, and if even he, the young master, was thrown into disarray, the impact on everyone's morale could be imagined. If he allowed this panic to spread, it was possible that the army would really be defeated like a collapsing mountain. Lin Yi smiled. He did not care too much about the results of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. However, he would not just stand by and watch Qi Wenhan and the others commit such a low-level mistake. Even if it was just for the sake of their friendship, he still wanted the Heavens Equal Escort Agency to maintain its position as one of the top 5 escort agencies. Otherwise, as the powerful trump card of the Qi father and son, Lin Yi would lose face. Looking at the matchups announced on the huge notice board, the escorts of the 32 escort agencies all rubbed their hands in glee. Finally, under the announcement of the judging panel, they all lined up and marched into their respective competition grounds. For every escort agency, there were 2 matches in the first round of the competition. One was to guard the escorts, and the other was to snatch the escorts. There was no time to adjust between the two matches, and they would start at the same time. In the huge magic cold square, the 32 escort agencies each occupied a space. In the center of each space, there was a treasure chest that had been prepared beforehand. This was their escorts' and it could also be said that this was their arena. 8 escorts would fight. 4 of them would be tasked with guarding their escorts' and their arena, while the other 4 would be tasked with snatching the escorts from the opposing agency's arena. The judging panel gave the order, and the 32 matches of the first round began at the same time. In 32 arenas, 256 golden core stage escorts began to fight. The atmosphere in the square was instantly pushed to its peak, and deafening cheers and shouts soared into the sky. The escorts in the arena were either attacking, defending, confronting each other, or cruising around. Everyone was as if they were facing a formidable enemy, and none of them dared to let their guard down. At this moment, the people who were the busiest were not the escorts, but the people in charge of the various escort agencies. Qi Wenhan, for example, could not attend to both matches at the same time, because they were held in 2 different arenas. In the end, he had no choice but to seek help from Steward Song, asking him to supervise the other escort robbery match. Steward Song's position in the Equal of Heaven escort agency was not inferior to Qi Wenhan's. With him supervising the match, the escorts did not dare to be negligent. However, in the face of Qi Wenhan's request for help, Steward Song shook his head mysteriously and pointed at Lin Yi. That's right. Qi Wenhan finally reacted, and he secretly praised Uncle Song's brilliance. How far-sighted. Chapter 44:10. Rather than having Uncle Song supervise the battle, it would be better to entrust this task to Ling Yi. Nominally, he was asking for his help, but in reality, he was showing that he valued this opportunity to improve their relationship, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Brother Ling, I can only entrust this matter to you. You must help me with this. Qi Wenhan turned to Lin Yi for help. Then all right. Lin Yi was slightly taken aback, but he did not refuse and immediately agreed. Although he wasn't as deeply rooted in the escort agency as Steward Song, with his status and strength, especially his past achievements, everyone in the agency was still in awe of him. However, it wouldn't be a big deal for him to supervise a battle. Moreover, Lin Yi was also quite interested in this matter. He was used to fighting with others personally, but he had never been an on-the-spot coach before. Today was the perfect opportunity for him to have some fun. Qi Wenhan himself guarded the escort battle, while Lin Yi led the 4 golden core escorts to the arena of Yongxing Escort Agency to rob their escorts and fight them. At this moment, the 4 escorts from Yongxing Escort Agency had already entered the arena. They were all prepared to face a formidable enemy and were ready to fight. Just as Lin Yi had said to Qi Wenhan, Equal of Heaven Escort Agency was one of the 5 major escort agencies. Although the 4 escorts from Yongxing Escort Agency were prepared to fight to the death before entering the arena, they could not help but feel nervous at this time. However, the 4 escorts who had come with Lin Yi were not nervous at all. This was the way of the world. The more important the battle, the more critical the situation, the stronger the enemy. It was important to have confidence. If one was afraid before the battle, even if they had a 40% chance of winning, it would be reduced to 30%, or even less. Lin Yi sized up the strength of the 4. 2 were at the peak of the late golden core stage, and 2 were at the late golden core stage. In the golden core stage, their strength was considered relatively strong. It was considered average. If he was not mistaken, these should be the best under the command of Yongxing Escort Agency. Because the escort guarding battle and the escort robbing battle started at the same time, and there was a time limit of 30 minutes, the escort guarding side naturally had a certain advantage over the escort robbing side. Therefore, many escort agencies would put their experts in the escort guarding battle. This way, they could guarantee the scoring rate. On the other hand, the 4 of them had 1 golden core paragon and 3 golden core late stage. They were basically on par with each other, with neither an advantage nor a disadvantage. As for the direction of the match, it was entirely dependent on the performance of both sides. Remember, in the first half an instant stick of time, don't make any attacks. At most, make some probing feints, but don't get entangled with the opponent. This is a four-man team battle. You must protect each other, and not leave any openings for each other. Lenny quickly entered the role of an on-the-spot coach. The four of them couldn't help but feel a little dazed. Even if they had such a duel in the past, it would be impossible. No one had ever given him such a detailed strategy. At most, they would stand at the side and supervise the battle. Who would have thought that Lin-Yi would be able to explain it in such a professional manner? Little did they know, Lenny was treating himself like a coach in the mundane world. Everything on the field was done by the players, of course, but Lenny didn't care. However, a truly brilliant coach would firmly grasp the direction of the match in his own hands, and then determine the final result. It was the same principle at this moment. But we only have 30 minutes. If we don't attack in the first half an instant stick of time, I'm afraid the remaining 30 minutes won't be enough. Right? The four of them looked at each other hesitantly. Finally, the most powerful expert in the Golden Core Paragon spoke up. To be honest, although Lenny had not joined the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency for a long time, with his previous heaven-defying deeds, his dazzling identity, and the fact that he was the honorary escort chief personally promised by the chief escort chief, Qi Mingyuan, the four of them were actually in awe of Lin-Yi. They dared not disobey Lin-Yi's instructions. However, they were now risking their lives to fight. Regardless of whether it was for themselves or for the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, they had to win this match. Otherwise, if they didn't have this resolve, they would only die even faster in this cruel battle of life and death. That was why they were worried. What if they did not have enough time and failed to steal the goods? What would they do then? If they failed to steal the goods, they would not get a single point. Even if they survived, how would they face the entire escort agency? How would they have the face to take the 50,000 spiritual jades? After all, they still had to continue working in the escort agency in the future. They were all people who cared about their reputation. It was not a good feeling to be gossiped about behind their backs, or even pointed at in front of them. No, we have enough time. Lenny shook his head confidently. He analyzed the situation for the four of them. Don't misunderstand. This match may seem like a life and death match, but the key is not the killing, but the goods. Aren't we fighting for the number of points? The four of them could not help but look at each other. This first match was nominally about stealing the goods. However, anyone who had read the rules would know that it was obviously a competition of points based on the number of people killed. As for the goods, it was just a symbolic gimmick. Hihi, if it's just a simple fight, don't you think it's too unskillful? Simple and violent tactics like this are very effective when you have the absolute advantage, but look at the opponent's strength. How confident do you think you'll be able to survive if you fight like this? Lenny asked. That's right. The four of them choked. They weren't fools. Both sides were equally matched in strength. If the competition continued to develop in a cruel direction, it wasn't impossible for all of them to be wiped out. It was already very rare for two of them to survive in the end. Remember, this match is not a simple fight. What you have to do is not only kill your opponent, but also protect yourselves. And the key to this lies in that box of goods. Lenny reminded them seriously. According to the rules of the match, whichever side has the goods will naturally have the upper hand. As long as they have the upper hand, they will be able to control the flow of the match. You will be able to secure points and escape unscathed at the same time. Hearing this, the four of them's eyes lit up. They were indeed fighting with the belief that they would die. However, if they could score points and escape unscathed at the same time, who would really want to die? Escort leader Ling, tell us what we should do. We will listen to you. The Golden Core Perfected Escort was the first to express his stance. Chapter 44:11. It's very simple. Just do as I said. Use the first half of the incense stick to test the waters. Wait for the other party to reveal a flaw, then strike hard. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember their numbers, and listen to my instructions. You guys work together to kill whoever I tell you to. Don't hesitate, do you understand? Lenny paused for a moment, then pointed at the 4 guards from Yongxing Escort Agency. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember their numbers, and listen to my instructions. Yes, sir. The 4 of them looked at each other and nodded. Then, they turned around and entered the arena. Success or failure depended on this one move. Seeing the 4 from Heaven's Equal Security Agency enter the arena, the 4 from Yongxing Security Agency, who were already on standby, looked at each other and became even more nervous. They did not know what the other party was planning, but they could at least sense one thing. The other party did not come with good intentions. So the Heaven's Equal Security Agency is only SOO. On the opposite side of the arena, a woman purposely shouted, judging from her attire and the attitude of the people around her. She should be the person in charge of Yongxing Security Agency. Lenny looked at her in surprise. In the chaotic waters of the South Continent, it was naturally difficult for female cultivators to gain a foothold. Yet this woman was able to become the person in charge of Yongxing Security Agency. It was quite rare. Only by overwhelming everything can one emerge victorious in the end. Other than that, all conspiracies and schemes are laughable, self-deceiving. You don't even understand such a basic principle. It seems like the Heaven's Equal Security Agency is really useless. You can't even find someone who can hold up the front. You were lucky to be one of the top 5 security agencies last time. You don't live up to your reputation, the woman said mockingly. The people around her were instantly attracted to her. Lin Yi's gaze also landed on her. However, he only curled the corner of his mouth slightly. He had no intention of retorting. He was not in the mood to bicker with a woman in such an occasion. Not to mention anything else, the woman's words had at least one effect. The 4 escorts from Yongxing Security Agency were obviously not as nervous as before. Deliberately belittling their opponent might have side effects, but at least it could build confidence. In a situation where both parties were equally matched, having confidence was more important than anything else. At this moment, the participants from both sides were already standing in their respective positions. As the staff of the convention lit incense sticks by the side of the stage, the first round of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency versus the Yongxing Escort Agency had officially begun. A man's reputation is like a tree's shadow. After all, the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency was one of the 5 great escort agencies. It was only natural that they would have an advantage in terms of mentality and aura. Under such circumstances, the members of the Yongxing Escort Agency thought that the other party would attack them without hesitation. However, the reality was that the 4 members of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency were cautious and maintained a tight formation so that they could take care of each other. He stood in confrontation with them from afar and didn't seem to have any intention to attack. See, this is your opponent, this kind of coward who mutters for a long time, but doesn't have the slightest bit of manliness. As a robber, he behaved like a coward, hiding in his shell and not daring to move. How could he be a match for our Yongxing Escort Agency? If we can't even beat this kind of trash, we can all go eat shit. Seeing this, the woman began to wantonly clamor again. The surrounding spectators burst into laughter. Although this escort leader of the Yongxing Escort Agency was a woman, her words were far more offensive than those of the other men. Moreover, she didn't need to care about bearing like men did. No matter how much she spoke, no one would blame her. This was simply infuriating. The 4 members of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency were clearly starting to lose their cool after being provoked by this woman so brazenly. They were here to fight with their lives on the line, not to be ridiculed by this woman. With so many people watching, they couldn't afford to lose face like this. Moreover, in front of women, men were naturally extremely competitive creatures. Even if they were beaten until their faces were swollen, they would still try to act strong. This was an innate instinct that was written in their genes before they were even born. The 4 of them couldn't hold back their anger, and finally launched their first attack. The strongest person, who had attained the golden elixir realm, was the first to attack. However, he wasn't completely blinded by anger. Although he attacked in anger, he consciously chose the weakest of the four, the golden elixir realm, as a breakthrough point. Lenny watched this scene from the sidelines and didn't say anything to stop it. Although he had asked the four of them to restrain themselves during the first half of the incense stick, this kind of probing attack was not a bad idea. On the other side, the female escort leader of the Yongxing escort agency suddenly revealed a smug sneer, as if her scheme had succeeded. Although she was a shrewd person, she wouldn't go so far as to ridicule in front of so many people without caring about her image. The reason why she did this was to provoke her opponent into taking the initiative. The defending side had a natural advantage. As long as they could defend the escorts within the time it took for an incense stick to burn, they would be able to score. However, the female escort leader of the Yongxing escort agency wouldn't be satisfied so easily. She had placed the four strongest escorts in this escort battle. As for the escort robbery battle, she did not have any hope at all. This was because the opponent was the most powerful escort agency among the 32 escort agencies, the 4C's escort agency. It was no different from a fool's dream to want to score points from them. This defense battle was crucial to the entire Yongxing escort agency. Not only did they have to score points, but they also had to score as many points as possible. Only in this way would they not be left behind by the other escort agencies. Therefore, simply defending the escorts was not enough. She had to find a way to provoke her opponent into taking the initiative and making mistakes. Only in this way could they score points from the Heaven's Equal escort agency. Based on the current situation, her provocative strategy was obviously working. In terms of individual strength, the expert in the golden elixir realm of the Equal escort agency was the strongest among the 8 people present. His choice of breakthrough point was the weakest of the 8, the golden elixir realm. At first glance, it seemed very wise. However, since the Yongxing escort agency dared to use such a provocative strategy, how could they not be prepared at all? Raging fire burns the city. The 4 people of the Yongxing escort agency suddenly joined hands to form a seal. 4 walls of fire suddenly rose into the sky without warning, trapping the lone expert in the golden elixir realm of the exceptional escort agency. From the looks of it, they were going to take this opportunity to annihilate him in one fell swoop. Oh no, hurry up and save him. Fortunately, the escorts of the Heaven's Equal escort agency still remembered Lin Yi's instructions and didn't completely let the expert in the golden elixir realm of the exceptional escort agency take the risk alone. Although the other 3 were a step behind, they could at least assist him. At this thought, the 3 of them hurriedly launched a joint attack. Chapter 44:12. Together with the Golden Core Perfection Realm Cultivator, who was trapped in the Wall of Fire, they finally managed to break through the Wall of Fire and create a path of retreat for their own people. Finally, they managed to escape unscathed. Even so, the Golden Core Perfection Realm Cultivator was still battered and exhausted. Not only was his body charred by the opponent's flames, there was also a pungent burnt smell coming from his body. He looked exactly like a coal miner. She does have some tricks up her sleeve. Lenny frowned slightly at the sight. It seemed that the opponent had come prepared. This kind of joint attack was clearly practiced. Both sides seemed to be evenly matched, but if they were to fight head-on, the 4 of them would have a very slim chance of winning. Yo, you were so timid just now. How did a group of 1,000-year-old bastards suddenly turn into rabbit spirits? How did you escape so quickly? The woman from Yongxing escort agency made sarcastic remarks with her hands on her hips. She continued to mock the opponent's tactics, causing the onlookers to burst into laughter. The faces of the 4 people from the Equal of Heaven escort agency turned as black as the bottom of a pot. If it weren't for the rules of the competition that forbade them from stepping out of the arena, they would have grabbed this bitch and given her a good beating. Now, however, they could only vent their anger on the 4 escorts. However, with the previous example, the four of them did not dare to act rashly. After all, the opponent's move, burning the city with raging fire, was not a joke. If the other three had not come to their rescue in time, the strongest among them, the Golden Core Perfection Realm Cultivator, would have been burnt to a crisp by now. However, if they were timid and did not dare to attack, the woman's words would definitely become more and more unpleasant. Not only would the four of them be embarrassed, but the entire equal of Heaven Escort Agency would also become a laughing stock. What should they do? Unable to advance or retreat, the four of them subconsciously turned to look at Lin Yi. Under such circumstances, they could only pin their hopes on this highly regarded honorary escort leader. Lin Yi looked at the incense stick on the side of the arena. It was still far from half an incense stick's time. There was still quite a gap from the time he had expected. He smiled at the four of them and said, "Again. One more time." The four of them couldn't help but stare blankly, and they were slightly puzzled in their hearts. However, when they saw Lin Yi's calm expression, they were influenced by him, and the panic they felt just now, which caught them off guard, disappeared. The four of them looked at each other and nodded. Since Lin Yi wanted them to test the waters again, there was nothing more to say. "Let's do it again. Hee, you're finally starting to look like a man. But this time, you won't be able to return." The woman from Yongxing Escort Agency sneered. The previous attack was actually the best opportunity, but in the end, the other party managed to escape. It was a pity. It could only be said that the other party did not underestimate him as much as he had imagined. After being taunted and provoked like that, the other party was actually able to maintain a formation that supported each other, causing all his efforts to be in vain. However, it didn't matter. His side's move was Raging Fire Burning City. He had specially selected 4 experts with fire attribute spirit roots and trained them together for an entire year. In order to cultivate the tacit understanding between them, they were not even allowed to go out on a mission. It was for the sake of showing off in this year's South State Escort Agency Grand Event. Although the events of every South State Escort Agency Grand Event were different, the essence was the same, which was that there was bound to be a team battle. Because this was the situation that was most likely to be encountered in reality, and the format could not be changed much. Therefore, Yongxing Escort Agency had made preparations for this. It could be said that they spared no effort. It was performed by 2 experts at the peak of the late stage of the Golden Elixir Realm, and 2 experts at the late stage of the Golden Elixir Realm, and they had specially trained together for an entire year. The power of this move, Raging Fire Burning City, was simply invincible in the Golden Elixir Realm. No matter how hard the other party tried, it would be in vain. It was pure wishful thinking to break through their defense line. After the confrontation just now, the 4 people of Yongxing Escort Agency were now completely in the zone. Between the 4 of them, there was a faint fluctuation of genuine qi. It was clear that they had joined together as a whole. The scorching heat emitted from their bodies seemed to be able to engulf people at any time, giving off an ominous feeling of extreme danger. Compared to before, the 4 people of Yongxing Escort Agency were obviously much more cautious in their probing attack this time. They were still at the exceptional stage of the Golden Elixir Realm, and chose to break through the other party's late stage of the Golden Elixir Realm. The only difference was that this time, the 4 people's formation was tighter. It was more convenient for them to take care of each other, and at the same time, they were less likely to be separated by the other party. Raging Fire Burning City. Another 4 walls of fire shot up into the sky. This time, not only the exceptional stage of the Golden Elixir Realm, who was at the forefront, but the other 3 people of Yongxing Escort Agency were also affected. Although they finally broke through the wall of fire, they were all emitting a burnt smell and were in a sorry state. The surrounding onlookers could not help but point fingers at them. As one of the top 5 escort agencies, they had initially thought that Yongxing Escort Agency would at least have the upper hand. However, from the looks of it, it seemed that they had no upper hand at all. They were being completely crushed by Yongxing Escort Agency. From the looks of it, Yongxing Escort Agency was very likely to become a dark horse this year and replace Yongxing Escort Agency's position. You don't know what's good for you. I advise the four of you to hide and not move. Otherwise, if you are all burned to ashes, everyone will say that Yongxing Escort Agency is a bully. That would be embarrassing for everyone, wouldn't it? Seeing this, the woman chattered even more incessantly. As usual, she provoked everyone's nerves. She was a classic example of someone who did not show mercy when she had the upper hand. What should we do? The four people of Yongxing Escort Agency clenched their teeth. They could not swallow this humiliation, but they did not dare to act rashly. They had already suffered twice in a row. The first time, it could be said that they had underestimated their enemy. However, the second time was not the case. If this went on, they really had no chance of winning. Second brother D, can you do it or not? Do you have the confidence to kill Shorty number 4? The few of them turned to look at Golden Core perfected in unison. This person's surname was D, and he was the second child in his family. Therefore, everyone in the escort agency called him Second Brother D. As for Shorty number 4, he was the person whose number Lin Yi had just called out. He was also the weakest person in the late-stage Golden Core realm. It's very difficult. Although Shorty number 4 is not much, when he works together with the other 3, their teamwork is very good. If we attack him, it means that we have to deal with all 4 of them at the same time. If we really want to kill him by force, at least 2 of us will die. Second Brother D shook his head helplessly. The crowd could not help but fall silent. They would have to lose at least 2 of their own in order to kill the weakest person in the late-stage Golden Core realm. There was no chance of winning at all. What should they do? Left with no choice, they could only ask for help from Lin Yi again. However, Lin Yi smiled and pointed to the half-burned incense stick beside him. Unhurriedly he said, "It's not time yet. Sit down and rest for a while." Chapter 44:13. The 4 of them were dumbfounded. However, seeing that Lin Yi did not look like he was joking, they could only sit down doubtfully. Now that the situation had developed to this stage, if they were to fight recklessly, they would be completely annihilated. Instead of that, they might as well trust this honorary escort leader, who had repeatedly performed astounding feats. Following Lin Yi's instructions, the 4 escorts of the Heaven's Equal Security Agency actually sat down cross-legged in front of everyone. This scene caused a commotion among the onlookers as they scratched their heads in bewilderment. What is this fellow up to? The female escort leader of the Yongxing Security Agency was also stunned. She had put in a lot of effort for the sake of this South Continent Escort Agency festival. Even though she had drawn 2 of the top 5 escort agencies, the 4 Seas Escort Agency and the Heaven's Equal Security Agency, and the prospects looked bleak, it did not stop her from pursuing her ambitions. Even if she could not take down the 4 Seas Escort Agency, she was determined to take down the Heaven's Equal Security Agency that had delivered itself to her doorstep. After the 2 confrontations, the Yongxing Security Agency's situation was looking good. Everyone thought that the outcome of the duel had been decided, and that it would depend on how many of the Heaven's Equal Security Agency's men would die. Who would have thought that the Heaven's Equal Security Agency's response would be so unexpected? Sitting cross-legged, did this mean that they were ready to surrender, because they knew that they could not win? The female escort leader was momentarily puzzled. As for the 4 escorts of the Yongxing Security Agency, as time ticked by, they had initially been in high spirits. In the end, they became flustered. Before they entered the arena, they had been instructed not to leave the escort and initiate the attack, no matter what. Therefore, even if the Heaven's Equal Security Agency's men were lying down and sleeping, they would not dare to make a move. Such petty tricks. How dare you play psychological warfare with me? The female escort thought that she had seen through Lin Yi's sinister intentions. She laughed coldly and gave up on her original plan. She waved her hand and said, "Since they don't dare to attack, let's go. Then let's go and kill them all. I'll get 80 points for sure." As soon as he said that, the 4 escorts of Yongxing Escort Agency were like tigers that had been freed from their shackles. Instantly, they showed their ferocious and sharp claws and teeth, and immediately attacked together. They had been waiting for these words. The 4 men from the Equal of Heaven escort agency could not help but feel their hearts clench as they faced the menacing enemy. Although they had entered the arena with the determination to fight to the death, they were really helpless in the face of the opponent's raging Inferno City. The 4 of them looked at Lin Yi, but saw that Lin Yi was still indifferent. Seeing that the other party was getting closer and closer, they could only grit their teeth and stand up helplessly. Since things had already come to this, they could only choose to exchange their lives for theirs. Other things aside, even if they had to sacrifice 2 lives, they had to break through the 4th shorty. Kill! The 4 of them suddenly emitted a solemn and stirring aura. Knowing that there was a tiger in the mountain, they were using their actions to prove the Equal of Heaven escort agency's reputation. There were no weaklings among the 5 escort agencies. Ridiculous! The female head of Yongxing escort agency laughed scornfully. After painstakingly practicing the raging Inferno City for a year, the last thing he was afraid of was fighting head-on with others. If the opponent was a nascent soul stage expert, then it would be fine. However, if the opponent was only a golden core stage, then fighting head-on would be suicide. Among the 4 of them, the golden core stage seemed to be the weakest link. However, if they really used him as a breakthrough point, then they would not even know how they died. The crowd at the side could not help but hold their breaths. The first round of the competition was purely a meat grinder. With 4 against 4, no one knew how many would survive in the end. Just as the 2 sides were about to engage in close combat, at the critical moment, Lin Yi's voice suddenly rang out from the side. Number 1. The rest of the crowd did not understand what he meant. While they were still confused, they saw the 4 men from the Equal of Heaven escort agency suddenly change their target. From the opponent's weakest, the golden core stage, to the opponent's strongest, the peak golden core stage. Haha, I've never seen such idiots. Originally, I only wanted 2 dead. This time, I'll wipe you all out. The female escort of the Yongxing escort agency laughed proudly. They could not even break through the weakest, the golden core stage, and yet they wanted to fight the strongest, the peak golden core stage. Wasn't this courting death? However, just as the woman's laughter rang out, it stopped abruptly. It was as if a duck had been suddenly grabbed by the neck. It was indescribably comical. However, the crowd did not find this comical at all. Instead, all of their mouths were wide open. This was because the strongest, the peak golden core stage of the Yongxing escort agency, had actually been killed by the 4 men from the Equal of Heaven escort agency in a single move. This scene shocked everyone. Even the 4 members of the Heaven's Equal escort agency, who had managed to pull off such a feat, found it inconceivable. Previously, he couldn't even break through the weakest late stage of gold core. And just now, he didn't have the slightest intention of underestimating him. He was still burning the city with fire. But why did it become so easy after he changed his target to the strongest peak late stage of gold core? At first, they thought that at least 2 of them would die. However, none of the 4 men had died. They were only wounded. How did you know? Steward Song asked, standing behind Lin Yi without him noticing. It's simple. Their raging Inferno City relies on their tacit understanding. Although the golden core stage is the weakest, he has the best teamwork with the others. Therefore, it is the most difficult to break through. However, the peak golden core stage, which is the strongest, is the exact opposite. Therefore, he is the best breakthrough point. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Since he claimed to be an on-the-spot coach, he naturally had to fulfill his duty as a coach. Although he was just standing at the side and doing nothing, he had been observing the opponent's flaws. Previously, when the opponent did not take the initiative to attack, this flaw was not so obvious. However, now, it was as obvious as a fly on a bald man's head. Watching her own people fall, the female escort of the Yongxing escort agency's face turned ashen. The raging Inferno City was a 4-person joint attack. Without any one of them, it could not be performed. They were doomed. Young hero Ling, You are indeed talented. I'm impressed, Stewart Song said sincerely. At this stage, everyone could see that the outcome was already decided. One of the Yongxing escort agency's members had died. Not only was their joint attack broken, but the 4 men from the Equal of Heaven escort agency also took the opportunity to snatch away the escorts. Haha, you're flattering me, Elder Song. I just like the look on some people's faces when they eat shit. Lin Yi smiled, looking pointedly at the arrogant female escort on the other side. The surrounding people's gazes became playful. Just now, this female escort had threatened to eat shit if she could not defeat the Equal of Heaven escort agency. Who knew if she would keep her word? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.